Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. The rain pattered softly against the windows of Hercule Poirot's London flat, a rhythmic counterpoint to the crackling fire in the hearth. It was an evening in late autumn, and the city outside was cloaked in a damp, silvery mist. Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the hour, sat in his favorite armchair, a cup of tisane steaming on the table beside him. His small, precise hands held an envelope, its cream-colored paper embossed with a curious symbol, a circle bisected by a sinuous line, like a serpent coiled around a staff. The envelope had arrived that morning, delivered by a courier who vanished. Before Poirot's valet, Georges, could question him, "Monsieur," Georges had said, presenting the letter with a slight bow, "this came for you." Most unusual, if I may say. Poirot had raised an eyebrow, his mustache twitching with curiosity. "Unusual, Georges? In what way?" "The courier, monsieur. He wore a scarf over his face, and his coat was, how shall I say, not of the finest quality, yet the envelope is exquisite." Poirot had taken the envelope, noting its weight and texture. The wax seal bore the same serpentine symbol, pressed with evident care. He broke it open, extracting a single sheet of paper. The message was brief, written in an elegant, flowing script. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot, asterisk greater than your reputation as a solver of puzzles precedes you. I humbly request your presence at Ravenwood Manor, Wiltshire, on the 15th of November, at midnight. A matter of great delicacy awaits your intellect. Come alone, and speak of this to no one. A car will collect you at 8 p.m. asterisk greater than yours in anticipation." A .R.no address was provided, nor any further clue to the sender's identity. The initials A.R. were followed by the same serpentine symbol, inked in deep crimson. Poirot had spent the day turning the letter over in his mind, his little gray cells humming with possibilities. A trap? A prank? Or perhaps a genuine mystery, one worthy of his talents? The absence of detail intrigued him as much as it frustrated him. He had telephoned his old friend, Chief Inspector Japp, to inquire discreetly about Ravenwood Manor, but Japp knew little beyond its reputation as the ancestral home of Lord Alistair Ravenwood, a reclusive aristocrat with a penchant for antiquities. No, as the clock on the mantelpiece chimed 7:30, Poirot made his decision. He rose, smoothing his waistcoat, and called for Georges. Georges, my coat and hat, if you please. I shall be going out tonight. Georges appeared, his expression betraying a flicker of concern. To Ravenwood Manor, monsieur? Poirot's eyes twinkled. You are perceptive, my friend. Yes, to Ravenwood. A car is to collect me shortly. I may be away for a day or two. See that my correspondence is attended to. Of course, monsieur. Shall I pack a valise? Poirot considered this and nodded. A small one, Georges. Essentials only. One does not know what awaits at Ravenwood, but one must always be prepared. By 8 o'clock, Poirot stood at the curb outside his flat, a sleek black Rolls-Royce idling before him. The driver, a taciturn man in a peaked cap, opened the door without a word. Poirot settled into the plush interior, his valise at his feet, and the car glided into the night. The journey to Wiltshire was long, the roads winding through darkened countryside. Poirot occupied himself by studying the envelope once more, tracing the serpentine symbol with a gloved finger. It was familiar, yet elusive, like a half-remembered dream got at last. The car turned onto a gravel drive, flanked by ancient oaks. Ravenwood Manor loomed ahead, its Gothic silhouette etched against the moonlit sky. Turrets and gables jutted from its stone facade, and ivy clung to the walls like a living shroud. The car stopped at the entrance, where a butler awaited, his face illuminated by the glow of a lantern. "Monsieur Poirot?" the butler inquired, his voice clipped and formal. "Oui. C'est moi," Poirot replied, stepping out. "And you are?" "Graves, sir, Lord Ravenwood's butler." "Please follow me." Graves led Poirot through a grand foyer, its walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and old leather. They ascended a sweeping staircase to a drawing room, where a fire roared in a massive hearth. A group of guests was already assembled, their conversation halting as Poirot entered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Graves announced, "Monsieur Hercule Poirot." Poirot bowed slightly, his keen eyes scanning the room. There were 7 guests, each distinct in demeanor and attire. A woman in a sapphire gown stood by the window, her posture rigid. A man with a monocle and a waxed mustache leaned against the mantelpiece, a glass of brandy in hand. A young lady in a simple frock sat nervously on a settee, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. The others, a scholarly-looking man with spectacles, a burly gentleman in tweeds, a woman dripping with pearls, and a thin, hawk-faced man in a black. Soot regarded Poirot with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "Bonsoir," Poirot said, his voice smooth. "It is a pleasure to meet you all, though I confess I know not why we are gathered. Perhaps someone might enlighten me?" The woman in the sapphire gown turned, her eyes sharp. "I am Madame Elise Dupont," she said, her accent faintly French. "Like you, I received a letter. It spoke of a delicate matter." The man with the monocle chuckled. "Victor Howell, antiquarian. Delicate, she says. I'd wager it's something far juicier. Ravenwood's got secrets, mark my words." "Secrets?" The young lady on the settee looked up, her voice trembling. "I'm Lady Beatrice Ravenwood. This is my uncle's home. He invited you all, didn't he?" A murmur rippled through the group. The scholarly man adjusted his spectacles. "Dr. Simon Carter, historian. I was invited to study Lord Ravenwood's collection of manuscripts. I assume the rest of you are here for similar reasons." The burly man snorted. "Thomas Reed, solicitor. I'm here on business, not some academic lark. Ravenwood owes me answers." The woman with pearls fanned herself. "Mrs. Lavinia Prescott. I came for the society, of course. Alistair always throws the most intriguing gatherings." The hawk-faced man said nothing, his eyes fixed on Poirot. Graves reappeared, bearing a tray of drinks. "Lord Ravenwood will join you shortly," he said. "In the meantime, please make yourselves comfortable." Poirot accepted a glass of sherry, his mind racing. 8 guests, including himself, each summoned by a cryptic letter. Lord Ravenwood's absence was conspicuous, and the serpentine symbol nagged at his memory. He recalled a case from years ago, involving a secret society rumored to guard a name. Ancient artifact. Could Ravenwood be connected? He approached Lady Beatrice, who seemed the least guarded. "Mademoiselle, your uncle he is a collector, oui?" She nodded, her eyes wide. "Oh, yes. Uncle Alistair loves old things books. Statues, strange symbols. He's always locked away in his study, deciphering something." "Symbols, you say?" Poirot's interest sharpened. "Perhaps one like this." He sketched the serpentine symbol on a napkin. Beatrice gasped. I've seen it in his papers. What does it mean?" Before Poirot could answer, the clock struck midnight. The chimes echoed through the manor, deep and resonant. The guests fell silent, their eyes turning to the door. Graves had promised Lord Ravenwood's arrival, but the door remained closed. A moment passed, then another. Unease settled over the room like dust. "Where is he?" Mrs. Prescott demanded, her fan snapping shut. "This is most irregular." Victor Hawley smirked. "Perhaps he's staging a grand entrance." Alistair always had a flair for the dramatic. Poirot set down his glass, his senses alert. "Monsieur Graves, Perhaps you might check on your master? Graves bowed. At once, sir. He exited, his footsteps fading down the hall. The guests resumed their murmurs, but Poirot's attention was elsewhere. He noticed Madame Dupont slip a small notebook into her reticule, her movements furtive. Dr. Carter was scribbling in a journal, his brow furrowed. Thomas Reed paced, muttering about wasted time. The hawk-faced man introduced earlier as Mr. Julian Voss watched them all, his expression unreadable. Minutes ticked by. Poirot was about to suggest a search when a piercing scream shattered the silence. It came from somewhere deep within the manor, high and desperate. The guests froze, their faces pale. Good heavens! Mrs. Prescott clutched her pearls. What was that? Poirot was already moving. Mies Amos remained calm. We must investigate. Monsieur Halley, Monsieur Reed with me, s'il vous plaît. The two men followed, albeit reluctantly. Lady Beatrice rose, trembling. I'm coming too. This is my home. Poirot nodded, respecting her resolve. The four of them hurried down a corridor, guided by Graves' distant voice calling for help. The scream had come from the west wing, where a heavy oak door stood ajar. Beyond it was a study, its walls lined with books and artifacts. A single lamp burned on a desk, casting long shadows. Graves knelt beside a figure slumped on the floor. It was Madame Dupont, her sapphire gown askew, her face ashen. In her hand was a crumpled scrap of paper, marked with a serpentine symbol. The room was locked from the inside, its only window bolted shut. There was no sign of an intruder, no trace of Lord Ravenwood. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, kneeling beside her. He checked her pulse, relieved to find it faint but present. She lives, but she is unconscious. Monsieur Graves, summon a doctor. Graves nodded, his composure shaken. At once, sir. Poirot's eyes swept the room. The desk was cluttered with papers, one of which bore a partial cipher, a grid of letters and numbers, incomplete. A bronze statuette of a serpent lay toppled, as if knocked over in a struggle. The window's latch was secure, but Poirot noticed a faint scratch on the frame, barely visible. He turned to the others. This room it is locked from within, oui? Yet Madame Dupont was attacked. How is this possible? Victor Hawley frowned. A secret passage, perhaps? These old houses are riddled with them. Thomas Reed scoffed. Nonsense. She probably fainted. Women do, you know. Lady Beatrice glared at him. Elise is no fainter. Something happened here. Poirot held up a hand. Peace, Mies Amos. We must think clearly. Mademoiselle Beatrice, this study, it belongs to your uncle? Yes, she said. He spends hours here, working on his ciphers. Poirot pocketed the scrap of paper, his mind alight with questions. Why attack Madame Dupont? Where was Lord Ravenwood? And what did the serpentine symbol signify? He glanced. At the door, where the same symbol was carved into the wood, almost imperceptible in the dim light. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice steady. We return to the drawing room. Madame Dupont will be cared for, and we shall await the doctor. But rest assured, Hercule Poirot will unravel this mystery. As they retraced their steps, Poirot's thoughts churned. The night had begun with an enigmatic invitation, but it had escalated into something far darker. The serpentine symbol was the key, he was certain. And somewhere in Ravenwood Manor, a truth waited to be uncovered, one that someone was desperate to keep hidden. The fire in the drawing room had dwindled, but Poirot's resolve burned bright. He would observe, he would listen, and he would deduce. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot was no stranger to its challenges. Chapter 2. The locked room vanishing the drawing room at Ravenwood Manor was a study in uneasy silence as Hercule Poirot and his companions returned from the west wing. The fire crackled feebly. casting flickering shadows across the faces of the gathered guests. Madame Elise Dupont's scream still echoed in their minds, and the mystery of her unconscious state in the locked study deepened the chill in the air. Poirot's sharp eyes darted from one guest to another, noting their expressions. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood's pale concern, Victor Hale's thinly veiled curiosity, Thomas Reed's impatient scowl, and the inscrutable gaze of Julian Voss. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott fanned herself vigorously, while Dr. Simon Carter scribbled in his journal, his pen scratching like a metronome. The seventh guest, Miss Clara Wren, the Manor's librarian, had joined them, her quiet demeanor betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot stood near the hearth, his small frame commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but firm, "we find ourselves in a situation most curious. Madame Dupont has been attacked, or so it appears, in a room locked from within. Lord Ravenwood remains absent, and a symbol, this serpent, appears again and again. We must proceed with order and clarity. Monsieur Graves, the doctor, has he been summoned?" The butler, still shaken, nodded. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. Dr. Hartley from the village is on his way. He should arrive within the hour." "On," Poirot said. "Until then, we must preserve the scene and gather what facts we may. Mademoiselle Beatrice, you know this house best. Tell me of the study, its entrances, its windows, its secrets." Lady Beatrice, seated on the settee, clasped her hands tightly. "It's Uncle Alastair's private study. Only he and Graves have keys, though I've been inside a few times. There's the door we entered, a single window, and, well, no secret passages, if that's what you're thinking. At least, none I know of." Victor Hawley chuckled, adjusting his monocle. "No secret passages? My dear, every old pile like this has its tricks. I'd wager there's a panel or trapdoor we've missed." Thomas Reed snorted, crossing his arms. "Wager all you like, Hawley. Sounds like a lot of romantic nonsense. The woman probably tripped and hit her head." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Monsieur Reed, you dismiss the evidence too quickly. A scream, a locked room, a symbol, these are not accidents." Madame Dupont held a paper with a partial cipher. "This is deliberate, non?" Dr. Carter looked up from his journal. "A cipher, you say? Fascinating. Lord Ravenwood's collection includes several coded manuscripts. Perhaps she stumbled upon something valuable." "Valuable enough to warrant an attack?" Mrs. Prescott interjected, her pearls glinting as she leaned forward. "This is dreadful. Are we all in danger?" Poirot raised a hand, his presence calming the rising tension. "We are not in danger if we remain vigilant. Now let us return to the study. I wish to examine it further, and I invite you all to join me. Observation, Mies Amos, is the key to understanding." The group hesitated, but curiosity and perhaps fear of being left alone propelled them to follow. Graves led the way, his lantern casting a wavering glow down the corridor. The oak door to the study stood as they had left it, the serpentine symbol etched into its wood catching the light. Inside, Madame Dupont had been moved to a chaise longue by the staff, a blanket draped over her. Her breathing was shallow, but steady, her face pale as porcelain. Poirot knelt beside her, examining the scrap of paper still clutched in her hand. It was torn, its edges ragged, and bore a grid of letters and numbers, interspersed with the serpentine symbol. He pocketed it carefully, then turned his attention to the room. The study was a treasure trove of antiquities. Shelves groaned under the weight of leather-bound tomes. A glass case held ancient coins, and a bronze serpent statuette lay on its side, as if knocked over in haste. The desk was cluttered with papers, an inkwell, and a quill, but Poirot's gaze fixed on the window. The window was tall, its leaded panes intact, the latch securely fastened. Yet Poirot's keen eyes detected a faint scratch on the frame, barely. A hair's breadth near the latch. He ran a gloved finger along it, his lips pursed in thought. "Monsieur Halley," he called, beckoning the antiquarian. "You spoke of secret passages. Come, examine this window. What do you see?" Halley swaggered over, his monocle glinting. A scratch, eh? Could be nothing, or it could be a sign of tampering. These old latches can be jimmied with the right tool. Precisement, Poirot murmured. He pressed gently on the frame, testing for give. There was none, but the scratch suggested someone had tried to force it. He turned to the group, who watched him with a mix of awe and impatience. "This room, it appears locked, yet someone entered or left. We must consider all possibilities." Miss Clara Wren, who had been silent, spoke up. "Monsieur Poirot, the Manor's archives mention no hidden exits in this room. I've catalogued Lord Ravenwood's papers for years. If there were a passage, I'd know." Poirot regarded her, noting the slight tremor in her voice. "Merci, Mademoiselle Wren. Your knowledge will be invaluable. Tell me, have you seen this symbol before?" He gestured to the door dot. Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the carving. "It's familiar. Lord Ravenwood was obsessed with an old society, something about a serpent and a cipher. He never explained fully, but his journals mention it." "Journals?" Poirot's interest sharpened. "Where are these journals kept?" "In the library, mostly," Clara replied. "Some are in his private safe, here in the study. But it's locked, and only he knows the combination." Poirot nodded, filing the information away. He turned to the desk, sifting through the papers. Most were mundane letters, invoices, but one caught his eye. A sketch of the serpentine symbol, surrounded by cryptic annotations. He tucked it into his pocket alongside the ciphered scrap. Julian Voss, who had lingered near the door, spoke for the first time. His voice was low, almost a hiss. "You're wasting time, Poirot. The woman was attacked. The culprit's long gone." Poirot met his gaze unflinching. "Monsieur Voss, in my experience, the culprit is rarely far. They watch, they wait, and they reveal themselves through their errors. Now, tell me, where were you when the scream was heard?" Voss's eyes narrowed. "In the drawing room? Like everyone else. I didn't see the point in gawking at a fainted woman." "Fainted?" Poirot's tone was sharp. "You assume much, monsieur. We shall see what the doctor says." As if on cue, Graves returned, ushering in Dr. Hartley, a stout man with a medical bag. He knelt beside Madame Dupont, checking her pulse and examining her eyes. "She's been drugged," he announced after a moment. "Something mild, likely chloroform. She'll recover, but she needs rest." "Drugged?" Lady Beatrice gasped. "But how?" "The door was locked." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A question most excellent, mademoiselle. Dr. Hartley, are there signs of a struggle?" The doctor shook his head. "None that I can see. No bruises, no cuts. She was likely taken by surprise." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A locked room, a drugged woman, a missing host, and a ciphered symbol. The pieces were disparate, yet he sensed a pattern forming. He addressed the group. "Mies Amos, we return to the drawing room. Madame Dupont will be cared for, and we must await her awakening. She may hold the key to this puzzle." As they filed out, Poirot lingered, his eyes sweeping the study once more. He noticed a faint scuff mark on the floor near the desk, partially hidden by a rug. Kneeling, he examined it, a curved mark, as if something heavy had been dragged. He followed it to a bookcase, its shelves packed tightly with volumes. He pressed against the wood, testing for movement, but it held firm. "Later," he murmured. To himself, "This room has secrets yet to yield." Back in the drawing room, the guests resumed their uneasy vigil. Poirot took a seat, his demeanor serene, but his mind a whirlwind of deduction. He observed each guest in turn. Mrs. Prescott whispered to Lady Beatrice, her fan fluttering. Victor Hawley and Thomas Reed argued in low tones about the manor's value. Dr. Carter continued scribbling, his journal now closed protectively. Clara Wren sat apart, her eyes darting to the door, and Julian Voss leaned against a wall, his gaze fixed on Poirot. Poirot's thoughts returned to the ciphered scrap. He slipped it from his pocket, studying it under the lamplight. The grid was incomplete, but the serpentine symbol appeared in several places, as if marking key positions. He recalled Clara's mention of a secret society. Could the symbol be their emblem? And why attack Madame Dupont? Had she seen something or someone she shouldn't have? He approached Dr. Carter, who looked up, startled. Monsieur le Docteur, you study manuscripts, oui? This symbol, does it appear in Lord Ravenwood's collection? Carter hesitated, then nodded. It's in some older texts, yes. It's linked to a group called the Order of the Serpent, active centuries ago. They used ciphers to guard their secrets. But it's all academic, surely it's not relevant now? Poirot smiled faintly. Everything is relevant until it is not, monsieur. The clock struck 1, its chimes heavy in the tense air. Poirot rose, addressing the group. Mesdames, et messieurs, we have learned much, yet know little. Madame Dupont will recover, and we shall hear her story. Until then, I suggest we retire, but with caution. Lock your doors, and trust no one until the truth is clear. The guests murmured their assent, though suspicion hung thick. Poirot escorted Lady Beatrice to her room, ensuring her safety, and retired to his own, a small but elegant chamber. He locked the door, placed the ciphered scrap and sketch in his valise, and sat by the window, gazing into the moonlit night, the studies locked. Door, the scratched window, the scuff mark, they pointed to a clever deception. Someone had entered and left without a trace, leaving Madame Dupont unconscious and Lord Ravenwood missing. The serpentine symbol was the thread tying it all together, and Poirot was determined to follow a dot as he prepared for bed. His little gray cells hummed with anticipation. The mystery of Ravenwood Manor was deepening, but Hercule Poirot was not one to shrink from a challenge. The chapter closed with him blowing out the candle, the darkness enveloping him, but his mind alight with the promise of truth. Chapter 3. Whispers of the cipher's origin. First light of dawn crept through the heavy drapes of Hercule Poirot's guest room at Ravenwood Manor, casting a pale glow across the polished floorboards. He had slept little, his mind too, occupied with the events of the previous night, Madame Dupont's attack, the locked study, the serpentine symbol, and the conspicuous absence of Lord Alistair Ravenwood. The little gray cells, as Poirot fondly called his mental faculties, had been at work, piecing together the fragments of this peculiar puzzle. He rose, dressed with his usual meticulous care, and prepared to face the day with renewed vigor. In the dining room, breakfast was a subdued affair. The guests gathered around a long mahogany table, their faces etched with fatigue and suspicion. Silver clinked against porcelain as they picked at plates of kedgeree and toast, the air thick with unspoken questions. Madame Dupont, still pale, but conscious, sat at one end, a shawl draped over her shoulders. Dr. Hartley had declared her fit to join them, though she spoke little, her eyes darting nervously. Poirot noted her reticence, as well as the absence of Julian Voss, who had yet to appear. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Beatrice said, breaking the silence, have you learned anything new? About my uncle, or what happened to Madame Dupont? Poirot sipped his coffee, his mustache impeccable despite the early hour. Mademoiselle, the truth is like a fine tapestry. It reveals itself thread by thread. Last night we found a cipher, a symbol, in a locked room. Today, we seek their meaning. Mademoiselle Wren, you mentioned Lord Ravenwood's journals. I should like to see them, if you please. Miss Clara Wren, the Manor's librarian, looked up from her plate, her expression guarded. Of course, Monsieur Poirot. Most are in the library, but some are sensitive. Lord Ravenwood kept them in his study safe. Sensitive, you say? Victor Hawley interjected, his monocle glinting as he leaned forward. Sounds like Alistair was hiding something juicy. That serpent symbol bet, it's tied to some old treasure. Thomas Reed scoffed, buttering his toast with unnecessary force. Treasure? Nonsense. Ravenwood's probably off on a bender, leaving us to deal with this mess. Gentlemen, Poirot said sharply, speculation without evidence is like a ship without a rudder. We must focus on facts. Madame Dupont, if you are able, tell us what you recall of last night. Elise Dupont's hands trembled as she set down her cup. I don't remember much. I was in the drawing room with everyone, then I felt restless. I wandered to the west wing, curious about Lord Ravenwood's collection. I entered the study. Graves had left the door ajar and saw papers on the desk. There was a symbol like the one you showed us. Then a sharp smell, like ether, and everything went dark. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A sharp smell, you say? And you saw no one? She shook her head. No one. It was so sudden. Dr. Simon Carter, who had been listening intently, closed his journal with a snap. Chloroform, no doubt, as Dr. Hartley suggested. But how did the attacker enter a locked room? It's baffling. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott fanned herself, her pearls, clicking softly. Baffling and dreadful. I shan't sleep a wink until this is sorted. Poirot rose, his small frame radiating authority. Then let us waste no time. Mademoiselle Wren, to the library, s'il vous plaît. The rest of you remain vigilant. Monsieur Voss's absence is noted, Graves. Where is he? The butler, standing by the door, bowed slightly. Mr. Voss left early this morning, sir. He said he had urgent business in the village, but would return by noon. Poirot's mustache twitched. Urgent business? At such an hour? Curious. Very well, we proceed. The library was a cavernous room, its walls lined with towering bookshelves, the air heavy with the scent of old paper and leather. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the floor. Clara led Poirot to a corner where a locked cabinet held Lord Ravenwood's personal journals. She produced a key from her pocket, her fingers hesitating. These are his private writings, she said. He trusted me to organize them, but he was particular about who saw them. Poirot nodded encouragingly. Your loyalty is admirable. Mademoiselle, but the truth serves Lord Ravenwood best now. Open the cabinet, if you please. Clara complied, revealing a stack of leather-bound journals, their spines embossed with the serpentine symbol. Poirot selected one at random, flipping. 2 pages filled with meticulous handwriting, sketches, and ciphers. One entry caught his eye, a reference to the Order of the Serpent, a society founded in the 17th century to protect a sacred cipher tied to Ravenwood's lineage. The entry hinted at a hidden artifact, the Cipher Stone, rumored to hold immense power. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. This order, it is no mere legend, then? Clara shook her head. Lord Ravenwood believed it was real. He spent years decoding their ciphers, searching for the stone. He thought it was hidden here in the manor. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And this symbol? It is their mark? Yes, Clara said. It appears in his oldest texts. He said it was a key to everything. Before Poirot could press further, the library door swung open, admitting Lady Beatrice and Victor Hawley. Beatrice's face was flushed with urgency. Monsieur Poirot, I found something in my uncle's study. I went back to check on Elise. and I noticed a note under the desk." She handed him a folded paper, its edges creased. Poirot unfolded it, revealing a single line in Ravenwood's distinctive script. "The midnight key unlocks the serpent's heart." Below it was the serpentine symbol, inked in crimson. Poirot's pulse quickened. The midnight key. A clue, perhaps, to Lord Ravenwood's whereabouts. "Mademoiselle, where was this note exactly?" "Wedged under the desk," Beatrice said. "It must have fallen during whatever happened." Halley peered over Poirot's shoulder. "A key, eh? Sounds like Alistair's playing one of his games. Probably hidden in a clock or some such nonsense." Poirot ignored the antiquarian's flippancy, his mind racing. "We must search the manor for anything related to a key or a clock. Mademoiselle Wren, are there any clocks of significance here?" Clara nodded. "The clock tower in the east wing. It's ancient, part of the original manor. Lord Ravenwood was fascinated by it." "On," Poirot said. "We shall investigate. But first, dinner approaches, and we must maintain appearances. The culprit, I suspect, is among us, watching our every move." The dinner that evening was a tense affair, the guests seated around a candle-lit table, laden with roast pheasant and claret. Julian Voss had returned, offering a vague excuse about a telegram in the village. Poirot observed him closely, noting his guarded demeanor. The conversation turned to Ravenwood's absence, with theories ranging from kidnapping to a staged disappearance. "Perhaps he's testing us," Mrs. Prescott suggested, her voice trembling. "Alistair always loved his riddles." Dr. Carter shook his head. "Or he's in danger. That cipher, it's tied to something valuable, and valuable things attract trouble." Thomas Red slammed his glass down. "Enough of this cipher nonsense. I'm here to settle a debt, not chase fairy tales." Poirot listened, his expression serene, but his mind cataloging every word, every glance. Lady Beatrice, seated beside him, whispered, "Monsieur Poirot, I'm frightened. What if Uncle Alistair is gone?" Poirot patted her hand. "Courage, mademoiselle. Your uncle is a man of secrets, but secrets can be unraveled. Trust in Poirot." After dinner, as the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered in the dining room, examining a portrait of a Ravenwood. Ancestor, a stern man with a serpent-shaped ring on his finger. The symbol again. He resolved to visit the clock tower at midnight, as the note suggested. But first, he needed to speak with Madame Dupont, who had retired to her room. He found her sitting by a window, her face still pale, but her eyes alert. "Madame," he said gently, "you are recovered, oui?" She nodded. "Enough to talk, Monsieur Poirot. I think I saw something before I blacked out. A shadow moving behind the bookcase in the study." Poirot's interest sharpened. "A shadow? Could you describe it?" "It was fleeting," she said. "Tall, perhaps, but I can't be sure. The smell came right after. And then, nothing." Poirot thanked her, his mind returning to the scuff mark near the bookcase. A hidden passage, as Halley had suggested, or a trick of light and chloroform. He bid Madame Dupont good night, advising her to lock her door, then retired to his room to prepare. For midnight dot, as the manor's clocks chimed 12, Poirot stood in the shadow of the clock tower, its ancient mechanism ticking like a heartbeat. The air was cold, the silence oppressive. He examined the base, finding a panel etched with the serpentine symbol. His fingers traced its edges, searching for a catch. Before he could proceed, a rustling sound made him turn. A figure darted into the darkness, their footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Poirot's heart raced, but he remained still, his senses alert. He approached the panel again, pressing gently. It clicked, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a brass key, its surface engraved with the serpentine symbol. He slipped it into his pocket, but a sudden creak overhead made him look up. A chandelier, loosened from its moorings, plummeted toward him. Poirot dove aside, the chandelier crashing inches from where he stood. Dust and glass scattered, and the manor seemed to hold its breath. He rose, unharmed but shaken, his mind ablaze with certainty. Someone wanted him stopped. Back in his room, Poirot locked the key in his valise, his thoughts racing. The midnight key, the cipher, the attack on Madame Dupont, the attempt on his own life. The threads were weaving together, but the pattern remained elusive. He sat by the window, the manor's silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. The night had deepened the mystery, but Poirot felt a quiet satisfaction. He had a tangible clue, and the culprit had made their first mistake. Tomorrow, he would confront the guests, probe their secrets, and follow the serpent's trail. For now, he allowed himself a moment of rest, his little gray cells humming with the promise of revelation. Chapter 4. The midnight key, the narrow escape from the falling chandelier, left Hercule Poirot's nerves taut, but his resolve unshaken. The brass key, now safely tucked in his valise, bore the serpentine symbol that haunted Ravenwood Manor, a tangible link to the deepening mystery. The clock tower's chimes still echoed in his mind as he returned to his room, locking the door with a soft click. The hour was late, the manor cloaked in silence, yet Poirot's little gray cells buzzed with activity. Someone had seen him at the clock tower, someone desperate enough to attempt murder. The game, he knew, had grown deadly. Morning brought a deceptive calm to Ravenwood Manor. Poirot descended to the breakfast room, his appearance as impeccable as ever, his mustache waxed to precision. The guests were already seated, their faces a gallery of unease. Madame Elise Dupont, though pale, seemed steadier, sipping tea with delicate hands. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood's eyes were red-rimmed, betraying a sleepless night. Victor Hall toyed with his monocle, his usual swagger subdued. Thomas Reed glowered at his plate, while Dr. Simon Carter scribbled in his journal. Oblivious to the tension, Mrs. Lavinia Prescott fanned herself, her pearls clicking softly, and Julian Voss sat apart, his hawk-like gaze fixed on the room. Miss Clara Wren, the librarian, served coffee with a quiet efficiency, her expression unreadable. Poirot took his seat, noting the absence of Lord Ravenwood's chair at the table's head. "Bon matin, Mies Amos," he said, his voice smooth. "I trust you slept well, despite our eventful night?" Mrs. Prescott shuddered. "Slept? Hardly. After that scream and poor Elise's ordeal, I expected a murderer under my bed." "Victor!" Hayley chuckled, though it lacked conviction. "Come now, Lavinia, it's just Alistair's theatrics. He's probably hiding in the attic, laughing at us." Lady Beatrice's cup clattered against its saucer. "My uncle isn't hiding, Mr. Hall. Something's happened to him. I know it." Poirot's eyes softened. "Mademoiselle, your concern is natural. We shall find your uncle, I promise. But we must proceed with method. Last night, I discovered a clue, a note speaking of a midnight key. Does this mean anything to anyone?" Murmur rippled through the group, but no one spoke. Poirot's gaze lingered on Julian Voss, whose fingers tightened around his knife. "Monsieur Voss," Poirot said, "you were absent early yesterday. Perhaps you know of this key?" Voss's lips curled faintly. "I know nothing of keys or ciphers, Poirot. I was in the village, as I said. Ask the innkeeper if you doubt." "Me?" Poirot nodded, filing the response away. He turned to Clara Wren. "Mademoiselle, you spoke of Lord Ravenwood's fascination with the clock tower. Is there anything else we should know about it?" Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering. "To the table. Only that he spent hours there, studying its mechanism. He said it was a guardian of secrets." "Secrets indeed," Poirot murmured. He resolved to keep the key's discovery to himself for now, sensing the room's undercurrent of distrust. Breakfast concluded, and the guests dispersed, some to the drawing-room, others to their chambers. Poirot, however, sought out Graves. The butler, finding him polishing silver in the pantry. "Monsieur Graves," Poirot said, "you have served Lord Ravenwood long, Tell me of the clock tower. Has anything unusual occurred there recently?" Graves paused, his cloth stilling. "His lordship was often there, sir, late at night. Last week I saw a light in the tower past midnight, though he told me he was retiring. I thought nothing of it at the time." Poirot's interest sharpened. "A light, you say? And no one else has access?" "Only his lordship and I, sir. The tower's locked, and I keep the key." "Merci, Monsieur Graves. You are most helpful." Poirot spent the morning in the library, poring over Lord Ravenwood's journals with Clara's assistance. The entries were dense with references to the Order of the Serpent, ciphers, and the elusive cipher stone. One passage stood out. "The key at midnight opens the heart, but only the worthy may claim the stone." Poirot's pulse quickened. The note Beatrice found, the key he held both, pointed to the clock tower as a fulcrum of the mystery dot as noon approached. Poirot joined Lady Beatrice in the garden, where she walked among frost-kissed roses. "Mademoiselle," he said, "your uncle's note about the midnight key, it suggests a mechanism, perhaps in the clock tower. Have you ever seen him with a key like this?" He described the brass key without revealing its discovery. Beatrice shook her head, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. "No, but he was always tinkering with odd things, keys, locks, old boxes. He said they were part of his research." Poirot nodded, his mind turning to the chandelier's fall. "Mademoiselle, stay close to the others today. There is danger here, and I would not have you harmed." Her eyes widened. "You think someone tried to hurt you last night, don't you?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Let us say I am cautious, as a cat is cautious near a sleeping dog." The day passed in a haze of suspicion. Poirot observed the guests, noting their interactions. Dr. Carter and Victor Hawley argued over a manuscript's authenticity, while Thomas Reed cornered Graves about Ravenwood's finances. Madame Dupont kept to herself, her notebook ever present, and Julian Voss vanished again, claiming another errand. Mrs. Prescott gossiped with Clara, who deflected questions about the manor's history with practiced ease. As evening fell, Poirot resolved to revisit the clock tower, but not alone. He enlisted Lady Beatrice and Dr. Carter, trusting their motives, at least for now. "We shall go at midnight," he told them in a low voice, "to see what secrets the tower yields. But we must be discreet." At the appointed hour, the trio gathered in the east wing, their breath visible in the cold air. The manor was silent, its corridors dark, save for the glow of Poirot's pocket torch. The clock tower loomed ahead, its iron door locked, as Graves had said. Poirot produced the brass key, its serpentine engraving catching the light. "Mon Dieu," Beatrice whispered. "Where did you find that?" "Last night," Poirot said, "in a compartment within the tower. Let us see what it unlocks." He inserted the key, turning it with a soft click. The door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase ascending into shadow. The air was musty, heavy with the scent of oil and metal. Poirot led the way, his torch illuminating cobwebbed walls. At the top was the clock's mechanism, a labyrinth of gears and pendulums, ticking with relentless precision. Poirot scanned the room, his eyes drawn to a panel on the wall, marked with a serpentine symbol. "There," he said, pointing. "The heart of the serpent, perhaps?" Dr. Carter adjusted his spectacles. "Remarkable. This mechanism is 17th century, likely original to the manor. If there's a hidden compartment, it's well disguised." Poirot approached the panel, his fingers probing its edges. Before he could proceed, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision, a figure cloaked in darkness, darting down the stairs. "After them!" Poirot cried, but the figure was swift, their footsteps fading. Beatrice clutched his arm. "Who was that?" "I do not know," Poirot said, his voice grim. "But they know we are close to the truth." He returned to the panel, pressing firmly. It clicked, sliding aside to reveal a small recess. Inside was a velvet pouch, but it was empty, its contents gone. Poirot's heart sank, but he noticed a faint inscription on the recess's interior. "The heart leads to the garden." The garden? Carter frowned. What could be there? Poirot pocketed the pouch, his mind racing. Another clue, another step. "The cipher stone, I believe, is near, but we are not alone in this hunt." As they descended, a sudden groan echoed through the tower. Poirot froze, his torch sweeping upward. The massive chandelier above, distinct from the one that nearly crushed him, swayed ominously, its chains straining. "Vite!" he shouted, pushing Beatrice and Carter toward the stairs. They stumbled down as the chandelier crashed behind them, its crystals shattering on the stone floor. Gasping, they reached the corridor, unharmed but shaken. Beatrice's face was pale. That was no accident. "Non," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "Someone wishes to stop us. But they have failed." Back in his room, Poirot locked the brass key and pouch in his valise, his thoughts a whirlwind. The empty pouch, the inscription, the shadowy figure, the mystery was unfolding, but danger closed in. He sat by the window, the manor's silhouette stark against the starry sky. The midnight key had opened a door, but it had also revealed a hunter in their midst. Tomorrow he would probe deeper, confront the guests, and follow the serpent's trail to the garden. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, but his resolve burning bright. The chapter closed with Poirot's quiet certainty. The truth was near, and he would seize it. Chapter 5. The Antiquarian's Secret. The morning after the clock tower incident found Ravenwood Manor bathed in a brittle sunlight, the frost on its windows glittering like a warning. Hercule Poirot, unscathed but alert, descended to the breakfast room with a measured step. The near-fatal chandelier crash had sharpened his focus, confirming that the hunter stalking the manor's secrets was growing reckless. The brass key and empty velvet pouch, now locked in his valise, were pieces of a puzzle that pointed to the garden, but Poirot knew he must first unravel the motives of those around him. His little gray cells hummed with purpose as he entered the room, where the guests were already gathered, their faces etched with varying shades of suspicion and fatigue. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat near the window, her hands clasped tightly around a teacup. Madame Elise Dupont, though still pale, appeared more composed, her notebook open on the table. Victor Hawley, the antiquarian, leaned back in his chair, his monocle catching the light as he bantered with Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, whose fan fluttered incessantly. Thomas Reed muttered about delays, while Dr. Simon Carter scribbled in his journal, his brow furrowed. Julian Voss, ever enigmatic, sipped coffee in silence, his hawk-like eyes scanning the room. Miss Clara Wren moved quietly, refilling cups, her expression guarded. The absence of Lord Alistair Ravenwood loomed like a shadow over the table. Poirot took his seat, his demeanor serene, but his gaze piercing. "Bon matin, Miss Amos," he said, spreading a napkin across his lap. "The night was eventful, non? I trust you all slept soundly?" Mrs. Prescott gasped, her pearls clicking. "Soundly? After all this? I declare, Monsieur Poirot, I heard the crash last night." "What happened?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "A chandelier in the clock tower fell. A most unfortunate accident. Or perhaps not so accidental." He let the words linger, noting the reactions. Beatrice's sharp intake of breath, Hale's raised eyebrow, Voss's fleeting smirk. "We progress, however. A clue points to the garden. But first, I seek to understand our company better. Monsieur Halley, you are an antiquarian, oui? Tell me, what brings you to Ravenwood? Halley adjusted his monocle, his smile sly. Curiosity. Poirot. Alistair's collection is legendary manuscripts, artifacts, ciphers. I heard whispers of a cipher stone, a relic tied to the Order of the Serpent. Worth a fortune, if it exists. A fortune? Thomas Reed snorted, slamming his fork down. More fairy tales. I'm here for hard cash, not some dusty rock. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And you, Monsieur Halley, believe this cipher stone is real? Hall shrugged. I've seen enough old texts to know legends often hide truth. Alistair was obsessed with it, spent years chasing clues. I figured I'd see what all the fuss was about. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging Hale's words. The antiquarians. Flippancy masked a keen interest, perhaps too keen. He turned to Lady Beatrice. Mademoiselle, your uncle spoke of this cipher stone? Beatrice nodded, her voice soft. He did, but only in passing. He said it was a family legacy, something. To protect, not sell. He was secretive about it. Protect, Poirot murmured, filing the word away. Breakfast concluded, and the guests scattered, some to the drawing-room, others to their chambers. Poirot, however, sought out Victor Hall, finding him in the library, examining a medieval manuscript with evident relish. Monsieur Hall, Poirot said, closing the door behind him. A word, if you please. Your interest in the cipher stone, it is more than academic, non? Halley looked up, his monocle glinting. You're a sharp one, Poirot. All right, I'll level with you. The stone's not just a relic, it's a map, or so the stories say. Points to something valuable, maybe gold, maybe knowledge. Alistair was close to finding it, and I want in. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And how far would you go to claim this prize? Far enough to attack Madame Dupont? To loosen a chandelier? Hale's face darkened. Now, see here, I'm no thug. I deal in books, not blood. Besides, I was in my room when that woman screamed, and last night I was nursing a brandy in the smoking room. An alibi easily claimed, Poirot said. But let us test your sincerity. Show me your papers, your notes on the cipher stone. Halley hesitated, then produced a leather portfolio from his satchel. Fine, but don't expect miracles. It's mostly guesses. Poirot flipped through the pages, finding sketches of the serpentine symbol, translations of ancient texts, and a crude map of Ravenwood Manor with the garden circled. One note stood out. The stone's guardian watches at midnight. Poirot's pulse quickened. The phrase echoed the note about the midnight key. This map, Poirot said, tapping it. You drew it? Halley nodded. Based on Alistair's ramblings. He mentioned the garden as a place of convergence. Figured it was worth a look. Poirot pocketed the map fragment, ignoring Hale's protest. Merci, Monsieur Halley. You have been most illuminating. As Poirot left the library, he encountered Lady Beatrice, her face flushed with agitation. Monsieur Poirot, I overheard Mr. Halley arguing with Dr. Carter earlier. Something about a forged document. I thought you should know. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Most interesting, mademoiselle. Where are they now? In the drawing room, she said. It was heated. They stopped when I entered. Poirot made his way to the drawing room, where Halley and Carter stood by the fireplace, their voices low but tense. Mrs. Prescott and Clara Wren sat nearby, pretending not to listen. Poirot cleared his throat, drawing their attention. Messieurs, he said, I hear there is a dispute. Perhaps you might share it with Poirot? Carter flushed, clutching his journal. It's nothing, really. A scholarly disagreement. Halley sneered. Scholarly? You accused me of forging a deed to an Order of the Serpent manuscript. I won't stand for it. Carter's eyes darted to Poirot. "I found discrepancies in his papers. The ink, the handwriting, they don't match the period he claims." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A forgery, you say?" "Monsieur Halley, May. I see this deed?" Halley bristled, but handed over a yellowed parchment. Poirot examined it, noting the uneven ink and inconsistent script. "Monsieur Carter is correct," he said. "This is a modern creation, cleverly done but flawed." "Monsieur?" "Halley, why deceive us?" Hale's bravado faltered. "All right, I faked it. Wanted to impress Alistair, get closer to his secrets. But I swear, I didn't hurt anyone." Poirot handed the parchment back, his expression unreadable. "We shall see. For now, remain where I can find you." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his thoughts racing. Hale's forgery suggested desperation, but was he the hunter? The map fragment pointed to the garden, aligning with the clock tower's inscription. Poirot resolved to search Elise Dupont's room, suspecting she held more clues. With Graves' assistance, he gained access, finding her notebook on the bedside table. The notebook contained sketches of the serpentine symbol, cipher grids, and a cryptic phrase. "The guardian's gaze falls on the rose." Poirot's heart raced. The garden again, and a rose perhaps a specific marker. He pocketed the notebook, intending to return it later, and left the room, his mind alight. Dinner that evening was a strained affair, the guests exchanging wary glances. Julian Voss, silent as ever, watched Poirot with unnerving intensity. Thomas Reed complained about the delay in resolving Ravenwood's absence, while Dr. Carter and Halley avoided each other's gaze. Lady Beatrice, seated beside Poirot, whispered, "I found something else, a letter in Uncle Alistair's study, addressed to me. It says to trust no one but the worthy. What does it mean?" Poirot patted her hand. "It means your uncle anticipated danger, mademoiselle. Show me this letter after dinner." As the meal ended, Poirot excused himself, feigning fatigue, but instead slipped into the garden. The night was crisp, the moon casting silver light over the roses. He followed the map fragment's markings, finding a stone bench near a rose arbor, its petals blood-red in the moonlight. Kneeling, he examined the bench, his fingers tracing a faint serpentine symbol carved into its base. Before he could investigate further, a rustling sound made him turn. A figure darted behind a hedge, their silhouette fleeting. Poirot stood, his torch sweeping the darkness, but the figure was gone. His heart pounded, but he felt a quiet triumph. A garden held secrets, and he was close to uncovering them. Returning to his room, Poirot locked the notebook and map fragment in his valise, alongside the brass key and pouch. He sat by the window, the manor's silhouette stark against the starry sky. Hale's forgery, Elise's notebook, Beatrice's letter, the garden symbol, the threads were tightening, but the hunter remained elusive. Tomorrow, he would confront the guests again, probe their lies, and search the garden. By daylight. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells aglow with the promise of truth. Chapter 6. The Heiress's Confession. The morning sun cast long shadows across Ravenwood Manor's frost-dusted lawns, but the chill in Hercule Poirot's heart owed more to the mystery tightening its grip. The brass key, the empty velvet pouch, and the serpentine symbol carved into the garden bench had brought him closer to the elusive cipher stone. Yet the shadowy figure in the garden, in the near-fatal chandelier incidents, underscored the danger. Someone among the guests was not merely a seeker of secrets, but a predator, willing to kill to protect or claim the prize. Poirot's little gray cells were alight, weaving connections between the clues, but he needed more motives, truths, and confessions. Breakfast was a tense affair, the dining room heavy with suspicion. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her face pale but resolute, the letter from her uncle clutched in her hand. Madame Elise Dupont, now recovered but wary, scribbled in her notebook. Victor Howell, his confidence shaken by the forgery revelation, toyed with his monocle in silence. Thomas Reed grumbled about wasted time, while Dr. Simon Carter's journal lay closed, his eyes darting nervously. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan fluttered like a trapped bird, and Julian Voss, ever enigmatic, sipped coffee with a faint smirk. Miss Clara Wren served quietly, her gaze avoiding Poirot's. Poirot spread his napkin, his demeanor calm, but his mind razor-sharp. "On Natin, Mies Amos," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "We progress in our little mystery. Non? A key, a cipher, a symbol all pointing to the garden. But I wonder, who among us knows more than they say?" Mrs. Prescott gasped, her pearls clicking. "Monsieur Poirot, you can't mean one of us is responsible for these dreadful events?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "I mean only that secrets hide in plain sight, madame." "Mademoiselle Beatrice, you have something to share, oui?" Beatrice hesitated, then handed him the letter. "I found this in Uncle Alastair's study, tucked inside a book. It's addressed to me." Poirot unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning. The elegant script, "My dearest Beatrice, asterisk greater than if you read this. I am gone, by choice or by force. The cipher stone is our family's burden, a legacy of the Order of the Serpent. Trust only the worthy, and beware the guardian who seeks its power. The heart lies in the garden, but the path is perilous. Forgive me, child. Asterisk greater than your loving uncle. Alastair." The serpentine symbol adorned the bottom, inked in crimson. Poirot's pulse quickened. The letter confirmed the cipher stone's importance and hinted at a traitor the guardian. He folded it carefully, his gaze sweeping the table. "This is most revealing, mademoiselle. Your uncle anticipated danger. Tell me, what do you know of this burden?" Beatrice's voice trembled. "Uncle Alastair was obsessed with the stone. He said it bankrupted our family years spent chasing it, buying manuscripts, funding expeditions. He swore it was his duty to find it, to protect it. I thought it was just an old man's fancy." Victor Hall leaned forward, his monocle glinting. "Bankrupted? That's news. Alastair always seemed flush. Maybe he found the stone and sold it," Thomas Reed snorted. "Or lost it and ran off to avoid creditors like me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Reed, your impatience is noted, but let us focus. Mademoiselle Beatrice, did your uncle mention a guardian?" She shook her head. "Not directly. He just said the stone was dangerous, and not everyone could be trusted." Poirot turned to Clara Wren, who stood by the sideboard. "Mademoiselle Wren, you catalogued Lord Ravenwood's journals. Did he write of this guardian?" Clara's hands faltered as she poured coffee. "He mentioned a protector, someone tied to the order, but it was vague, like most of his notes." "Vague, perhaps," Poirot said, "but vital. We shall visit the library again, mademoiselle. The journals may hold more." After breakfast, Poirot followed Beatrice to her uncle's study, hoping to find the book where the letter was hidden. The room was as they'd left it, the bronze serpent statuette still toppled, the desk cluttered with papers. Beatrice pointed to a shelf. It was in there, a volume on medieval ciphers. Poirot retrieved the book, a heavy tome bound in cracked leather. Tucked between its pages was a second note in Ravenwood's hand. "The rose watches the worthy." The phrase echoed Elise's notebook, reinforcing the garden's significance. Poirot pocketed the note, then noticed a faint outline on the shelf, a rectangular impression, as if something had been removed. "A box, perhaps," he murmured. "Or a compartment." "Mademoiselle, have you seen anything like this?" Beatrice frowned. "Not here, but Uncle had a small safe behind the portrait over the fireplace. He never let me see inside. Poirot approached the portrait, a stern Ravenwood, ancestor with a serpent ring. He pressed the frame, and it swung open, revealing a safe with a combination lock. "Mon Dieu," he said, "without the code we are stalled. But we shall return." As they left the study, a commotion erupted in the hall. Graves, the butler, was restraining Julian Voss, who clutched a satchel. "I caught him in the west." "Wing, sir," Graves said, his voice strained. He was near the study. Voss's eyes flashed. "I was looking for a book, that's all. Let go, man." Poirot stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Monsieur Voss, your wanderings are most curious." "What book, pray tell?" Voss hesitated, then muttered, "A history of the manor. I thought it might explain things." Poirot gestured to the satchel. "May I?" Voss reluctantly handed it over. Inside, Poirot found a notebook filled with sketches of the serpentine symbol and a map fragment, similar to Hale's, but marked with a rose arbor. "Interesting," Poirot said. "You, too, seek the cipher stone?" Voss's jaw tightened. "I'm a collector." "I heard rumors, same as Hal. Nothing illegal about that." "None," Poirot said, "but secrecy breeds suspicion." "Remain where?" "I can see you, monsieur." The incident unsettled Beatrice, who clung to Poirot's arm as they returned to the library. There, Clara awaited, a journal open before her. "I found something," she said, her voice low. "It mentions a ritual chamber, hidden beneath the manor. Lord Ravenwood believed it was tied to the cipher stone." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A chamber? Where?" "The journal says it's accessed through the clock tower," Clara replied. "But it's dangerous traps," he wrote. Before Poirot could respond, a shadow fell across the doorway. Julian Voss stood there, his expression unreadable. "You're getting close, Poirot," he said. "Be careful what you dig up." The words carried a chill, and Poirot felt the weight of unseen eyes. He escorted Beatrice back to the drawing room, advising her to stay with the others. Alone, he returned to the clock tower, the brass key heavy in his pocket. The spiral staircase was as he'd left it, the shattered chandelier a stark reminder of danger. He examined the floor, finding a trapdoor beneath a rug, its edges marked with the serpentine symbol. He hesitated, aware of the risk, but curiosity drove him. The key fit the lock, and the trapdoor creaked open, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. Poirot's torch illuminated damp walls, the air thick with mildew. At the bottom was a chamber, its centerpiece a stone altar engraved with the serpentine symbol. Scattered papers and candle stubs suggested recent use, a ritual, perhaps, before. He could investigate further. A noise behind him made him spin. Dr. Simon Carter stood at the foot of the stairs, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I followed you. I thought you might need help." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Most thoughtful, monsieur, but unwise to creep in shadows. What do you know of this chamber?" Carter adjusted his spectacles. "Only what's in the journal's an old meeting place for the order. I'm a historian, not a conspirator." Poirot gestured to the altar. "And this? A ritual?" Carter nodded. "Possibly. The order used ciphers to guard their secrets. This could be where they hid the stone." Poirot searched the chamber, finding a tattered journal page tucked behind the altar. It described a ritual involving a rose key, reinforcing the garden's role. He pocketed it, then led Carter back upstairs, locking the trapdoor. "We say nothing of this for now," he warned. "The hunter is close." Back in his room, Poirot added the journal page to his growing collection of clues. The chamber, the rose, the guardian, the pieces were aligning, but the puzzle was incomplete. He sat by the window, the manor's silhouette stark against the twilight. Carter's appearance was too convenient. Voss's threat too pointed. The hunter had made another move, but Poirot was ready. Tomorrow, he would search the garden with Beatrice, confront Carter's motives, and unravel the rituals. Meaning. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells burning with the thrill of the chase. Chapter 7. The Ritual Chamber. The discovery of the hidden chamber beneath. Ravenwood Manor's clock tower had set Hercule Poirot's mind ablaze. The stone altar, the serpentine symbol, and the journal page hinting at a rose key were threads in the intricate tapestry of the cipher stone's mystery. Yet the presence of Dr. Simon Carter at the chamber's entrance gnawed at him too convenient, too timely. The hunter, Poirot sensed, was closing in, their desperation evident, in the chandelier's fall and the shadowy figures haunting the manor's corners. As morning light filtered through his room's drapes, Poirot dressed with his usual precision, his little gray cells primed for the day's revelations. Breakfast was a somber affair, the dining room's grandeur overshadowed by the guests. Strained faces. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her eyes shadowed with worry. Madame Elise Dupont, now steadier, kept her notebook close, her glances wary. Victor Hall, chastened by his forgery's exposure, picked at his food in silence. Thomas Reed's impatience boiled over in sharp remarks, while Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan fluttered like a nervous pulse. Julian Voss, ever watchful, sipped coffee with a faint smirk. Miss Clara Wren moved quietly, her expression guarded, and Dr. Simon Carter's journal lay open, his pen scratching furiously. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice cutting through the tension. Bon matin, mes amis. Our mystery deepens non? A cipher, a key, a garden each clue leads us closer to Lord Ravenwood and the cipher stone. But I wonder, who among us hides the truth? Mrs. Prescott gasped, her pearls clicking. Monsieur Poirot, you keep saying such things? It's dreadful to think one of us is involved. Poirot's mustache twitched. Dreadful, perhaps, but necessary. Monsieur Carter, you are a historian. We? Tell me, what do you know of rituals tied to the Order of the Serpent? Carter's pen stilled, his face flushing. Rituals? Only what's in old text ceremonies to protect their secrets, often involving ciphers. Why do you ask? Poirot's gaze was unyielding. A passing thought, monsieur. But your knowledge is most valuable. The meal ended, and the guests dispersed, their unease palpable. Poirot sought out Lady Beatrice, finding her in the drawing-room, staring at a portrait of her uncle. Mademoiselle, he said gently, your uncle's letter spoke of a guardian. Last night, I found a chamber beneath the clock tower, a place of rituals. Does this spark any memory? Beatrice's eyes widened. A chamber? No, he never mentioned it. But he was always in the tower, late at night. I thought he was just eccentric. Poirot nodded, his mind returning to the journal page. The chamber holds secrets, mademoiselle. We must return, but with care. The hunter watches. Before they could continue, Clara Wren entered, her face pale. Monsieur Poirot, I found something in the library, a journal entry about a ritual chamber. It mentions a rose key and a poem. Poirot's pulse quickened. Show me, mademoiselle. In the library, Clara opened a journal to a page written in Lord Ravenwood's precise hand. It described a ritual chamber, accessed via the clock tower, where the Order of the Serpent hid the cipher stone. A poem followed. Beneath the serpent's watchful eye, the rose key blooms where shadows lie at midnight's toll. The heart unfolds, too. Guard the stone, as tailies of old. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The rose key again, and the garden. Mademoiselle Wren, this is invaluable. Have you seen this poem before? Clara shook her head. No, but Lord Ravenwood was secretive about his work. He trusted me with his papers, but not his plans. Poirot pocketed a copy of the poem, his mind racing. The chamber, the poem, the garden, the clues were converging, but Carter's presence in the chamber lingered like a discordant note. He resolved to confront the historian, but first, he needed to revisit the ritual chamber, this time with witnesses. He enlisted Beatrice and Clara, trusting their connection to Ravenwood. "We go now," he told them, "while the manor is quiet. But we must be swift." The clock tower's iron door yielded to the brass key, its serpentine engraving catching the daylight. The spiral staircase descended into shadow, the air heavy with mildew. At the chamber's entrance, Poirot paused, his torch sweeping the stone walls. The altar stood as before, its serpentine symbol stark in the gloom. Scattered candle stubs and chalk marks suggested recent activity, a ritual, perhaps, or a search. Beatrice gasped, clutching Clara's arm. "This place, it's eerie. What did Uncle Alistair do here?" Poirot knelt by the altar, examining a faint inscription. "The rose unlocks the heart." He traced the words, his mind aligning them with the poem. "The heart," he murmured. "Perhaps the stone itself." Clara pointed to a niche in the wall, partially hidden by cobwebs. "There's something's tucked away." Poirot retrieved a small scroll, its parchment brittle. Unrolling it, he found a sketch of a rose arbor, identical to the one in the garden, with the serpentine symbol at its center. A note read, "The worthy kneel at the rose's feet." "Mon Dieu," Poirot said, "the garden again. The rose arbor is the key." Before he could say more, a scuffle sounded above. Poirot spun, his torch illuminating Dr. Simon Carter at the trapdoor's edge, his face a mask of surprise. "Monsieur." "Poirot, I saw you enter the tower. I was concerned." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Concerned, monsieur? Or curious? This is the second time you follow me to this chamber. Speak plainly. What do you seek?" Carter stammered, adjusting his spectacles. "I'm a scholar, nothing more. The Order's rituals fascinate me. I thought I could help." Beatrice stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Help or spy? You've been scribbling in that journal nonstop. What's in it?" Carter clutched his journal, his face paling. "Notes, that's all. Historical notes." Poirot extended a hand. "Then you will not mind sharing them, oui?" Reluctantly, Carter handed over the journal. Poirot flicked through pages filled with sketches of the serpentine symbol, cipher grids, and references to the cipher stone. One entry stood out. "The ritual chamber hides the stone's heart, but the guardian must be appeased." "Most interesting," Poirot said, returning the journal. "You know more than you claim, monsieur. For now, you come with us." "No more solitary wanderings." Carter nodded, his demeanor cowed. Poirot led the group back upstairs, locking the trapdoor with the brass key. The chamber had yielded a crucial clue, the rose arbor, but Carter's repeated appearances raised questions. Was he merely a curious scholar, or something more sinister? In the drawing room, the other guests were gathered, their tension palpable. Julian Voss watched Poirot's return with a faint smirk, while Victor Hawley and Thomas Reed argued over Ravenwood's finances. Madame Elise Dupont looked up from her notebook, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Prescott fanned herself, murmuring about ghosts. Poirot addressed the group, his voice steady. "Mies Amos, we have found a chamber beneath the manor, a place of ancient rituals. It points us to the garden, where the cipher stone may lie. But I warn you, the hunter among us grows bold. Stay together and trust no one." As the guests murmured, Poirot caught Voss's gaze, cold and calculating. He resolved to watch the man closely, suspecting his errands hid darker motives. Dinner that evening was strained, the conversation stilted. Beatrice whispered to Poirot, "I'm scared, but I want to help." Let me search the garden with you. Poirot nodded. Tomorrow, mademoiselle, at dawn. We shall find the rose's secret. After dinner, Poirot retired to his room, locking the scroll and poem copy in his valise, alongside the key, pouch, and other clues. He sat by the window, the manor silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. Carter's journal, the ritual chamber. The rose arbor, the puzzle, was taking shape, but the guardian's identity eluded him. A sudden noise outside his door made him freeze. Slipping to the keyhole, he saw a shadow pass tall, swift, on in an instant. His heart raced, but he felt a quiet triumph. The hunter had revealed themselves again, and each misstep brought Poirot closer to the truth. Tomorrow, he would search the garden, probe Carter's motives, and confront Voss's secrecy. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells aglow with the thrill of the chase. Chapter 8. The poem's riddle. The dawn broke over Ravenwood Manor with a fragile clarity. The sky streaked with pink and gold, but Hercule Poirot felt no warmth in the light. The ritual chamber's secrets, the altar, the scroll, the poem, hinting at a rose key, had tightened the web of the Cipher Stone's mystery. Dr. Simon, Carter's repeated appearances, Julian Voss's elusive wanderings, and the shadowy figure outside Poirot's door last night confirmed that the hunter was growing desperate. The garden, marked by the rose arbor, was the next step, and Poirot's little gray cells thrummed with anticipation. Someone among the guests knew more than they admitted, and today he intended to unravel their secrets. In the breakfast room, the atmosphere was brittle, the guests' faces drawn from sleepless nights. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her resolve firm despite her pallor. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook ever present, sipped tea with a guarded expression. Victor Hawley, subdued since his forgery's exposure, avoided eye contact. Thomas Reed muttered about legal action, his patience frayed. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan fluttered incessantly, her pearls glinting in the morning light. Julian Voss, back from another unexplained absence, watched the room with the predators. Calm. Miss Clara Wren served quietly, her eyes darting to Poirot. Dr. Simon Carter scribbled in his journal, his nervous energy palpable. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice cutting through the tension. Bon matin, Miss Amos. Our puzzle grows. Clearer, none? A chamber, a poem, a rose all point to the garden. But I wonder, who among us fears the truth's approach? Mrs. Prescott gasped, her fan snapping shut. Monsieur Poirot, you make it sound so sinister. Surely we're all victims here? Poirot's mustache twitched. Victims, perhaps, but not all are innocent. Mademoiselle Beatrice, you are ready to search the garden, oui? Beatrice nodded, her voice steady. At dawn, as we planned, I want to find Uncle Alastair. Poirot turned to Clara Wren. Mademoiselle, the poem you found, the rose key blooms where shadows lie. Have you seen anything in the garden that matches this? Clara hesitated, her hand smoothing her apron. The rose arbor, perhaps. Lord Ravenwood often walked there, saying it was a place of reflection. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Reflection, indeed. We shall see. Breakfast ended, and Poirot enlisted Captain Hastings, who had arrived late the previous night at Poirot's request to join the garden search. Hastings, ever loyal but occasionally baffled, listened as Poirot briefed him. A rose key, Poirot? Sounds like something out of a novel. Are you sure it's not just a metaphor? Poirot's smile was faint. Mon ami, in this matter, nothing is merely a metaphor. The rose arbor holds the next clue, but we must be cautious. The hunter is near. With Beatrice and Hastings, Poirot ventured into the garden, the air crisp and heavy with dew. The rose arbor stood at the garden's heart, its blood-red blooms stark against the frost. Poirot knelt by the stone bench, its serpentine symbol faint but unmistakable. He traced the carving, recalling the poem. At midnight's toll, the heart unfolds. Hastings frowned. Midnight again? We're here now, Poirot? What's the plan? Poirot's eyes scanned the arbor. We search for the rose key, mon ami. The poem suggests a mechanism, perhaps triggered by the bench or the roses themselves. Beatrice pointed to a stone slab beneath the arbor, partially hidden by vines. Their uncle Alastair used to sit there reading. Could it be important? Poirot brushed away the vines, revealing a faint outline in the stone, as if a panel. Could be lifted. He pressed it, but it held firm. A lock, perhaps, he murmured, producing the brass key from his pocket. The key fit a hidden slot, and with a soft click, the slab shifted, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside was a small metal box, its lid engraved with the serpentine symbol. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed, lifting the box. It was heavy, its surface cold. He opened it, revealing a silver medallion, its face etched with a rose and the serpentine symbol intertwined. A faint glow pulsed from its edges, as if imbued with some strange energy. Beatrice gasped. Is that the cipher stone? Poirot shook his head. None, mademoiselle, but a piece of it, I suspect. A key to the heart, as the poem says. Hastings peered over his shoulder. Jolly good find, Poirot. But what's it for? Before Poirot could answer, a rust crackle in the bushes made them turn. A figure darted away, their silhouette fleeting in the dawn light. Hastings gave chase, but the figure vanished into the maze of hedges. Blast, he panted, returning. They're quick, whoever they are. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The hunter, mon ami. They know we are close. As they returned to the manor, Poirot noticed Dr. Carter watching from an upstairs window, his face pale. The historian's repeated proximity to key discoveries was no coincidence, Poirot thought. He resolved to confront him, but first he examined the medallion in the privacy of his room. Its glow was faint but persistent, and a tiny inscription. Read, the rose guards the heart's final secret. At luncheon, the guests were restless, the air thick with suspicion. Poirot kept the medallion hidden, sensing the time was not yet right to reveal it. Instead, he observed the group, noting Voss's absence again, and Carter's nervous scribbling. Madame Dupont's notebook lay open, her sketches mirroring the medallion's design, a detail Poirot found intriguing. After the meal, he cornered Carter in the library. Monsieur, he said, his voice low, your interest in the ritual. Chamber, and now the garden, is most pronounced. What do you hide in that journal? Carter flushed, clutching the book. Nothing, Monsieur Poirot. Just notes on the Order of the Serpent. I'm a scholar, not a villain. Poirot extended a hand. Then you will not mind sharing, oui? Reluctantly, Carter handed over the journal. Poirot found pages of cipher grids, historical references, and a sketch of the rose arbor, annotated with, "The medallion unlocks the stone's heart." Poirot's pulse quickened. Carter knew more than he admitted, but was he the hunter? Merci, monsieur, Poirot said, returning the journal, but I advise you stay where I can see you. As evening approached, a sudden storm rolled in. Thunder rumbling over the manor. Poirot gathered Beatrice and Hastings in the drawing room, the medallion secure in his pocket. The storm will keep our hunter indoors, he said. Tonight we plan. The medallion is a key, but to what? The garden holds more secrets, and we must find them. Beatrice nodded, her resolve firm. I'll help, Monsieur Poirot, for Uncle Alastair. Hastings clapped his hands. Right then. What's next, old boy? Poirot's eyes gleamed. We return to the garden at first light, mon ami. The rose arbor hides the final piece. But we must be ready, the hunter will strike again. Dinner was a strained affair, the storm's roar drowning out conversation. Voss returned, claiming he'd been caught in the rain, but Poirot noted his dry coat. Carter avoided eye contact, while Hawley and Reed bickered over trivialities. Madame Dupont's sketches grew more frantic, and Mrs. Prescott's fan beat like a drum. Retiring to his room, Poirot locked the medallion in his valise, alongside the key, pouch, and other clues. He sat by the window, the storm's fury mirroring his thoughts. The medallion, the rose arbor, the guardian, the puzzle was nearly complete, but the hunter's identity remained elusive. A flash of lightning illuminated the garden, and for a moment, Poirot thought he saw a figure near the rose arbor, motionless in the rain. He blinked, and it was gone. His heart raced, but he felt a quiet triumph. The hunter was restless, and their mistakes were mounting. Tomorrow, he would search the garden, confront Carter and Voss, and unlock the rose's secret. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells alight with the promise of victory. Chapter 9. The Doctor's Deception. The storm that battered Ravenwood Manor through the night had subsided by dawn, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and bruised roses. Hercule Poirot stood by his window, the silver medallion. From the garden's rose arbor locked safely in his valise, alongside the brass key, velvet pouch, and cryptic notes. The medallion's faint glow and its inscription, "The rose guards the heart's final secret," pointed to a culmination in the garden. But the shadowy figure spotted in the storm, and Dr. Simon Carter's persistent proximity to key discoveries, gnawed at Poirot's instincts. The hunter was among them, their desperation palpable, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to expose their deception. Breakfast was a strained ritual, the dining room chandelier casting stark shadows over the guests. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her eyes resolute despite the strain of sleepless nights. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook filled with sketches mirroring the medallion's design, sipped tea with a wary gaze. Victor Hall, subdued since his forgery's exposure, toyed with his monocle. Thomas Reed's grumbling had escalated to threats of leaving, while Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan beat a nervous rhythm. Julian Voss, his absences increasingly suspicious, watched the room with a predator's calm. Miss Clara Wren served coffee. With mechanical precision, her expression guarded, Dr. Simon Carter, his journal ever present, scribbled with a nervous energy that drew Poirot's attention. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice slicing through the tension. "Bon matin, Mies Amos. Our puzzle nears its heart, non? A medallion, a rose, a guardian all lead us to the garden. But I wonder, who among us fears the light of truth?" Mrs. Prescott gasped, her pearls clicking. "Monsieur Poirot, you keep hinting at treachery. It's positively chilling." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Chilling, perhaps, but necessary. Monsieur Carter, you have been most present at critical moments. Tell me, what is your true interest in the cipher stone?" Carter's pen froze, his face flushing. "I'm a historian, Monsieur Poirot. My interest is academic, the order of the serpent, their ciphers, their rituals. I've done nothing wrong." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you appear where secrets are uncovered first, the ritual chamber, now near the garden. Your journal, it holds more than notes, oui?" Carter clutched the journal, his voice rising. "I've shown you my notes. They're harmless." Beatrice leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Then why were you watching from the window yesterday, when Monsieur Poirot was in the garden?" The room stilled, all eyes on Carter. He stammered, adjusting his spectacles. I was curious. I saw movement and thought it might be relevant." Poirot rose, his small frame commanding. "Curiosity, monsieur, or something more? Come, we shall speak privately." He led Carter to the library, where the morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the shelves. Poirot closed the door, his tone firm. "Monsieur Carter, your alibi for Madame Dupont's attack, it is weak. You were in the drawing room, you say, but no one recalls seeing you at the precise moment of the scream. And your journal, it knows too much. Speak plainly, or I shall assume the worst." Carter's shoulders slumped, his bravado crumbling. "All right, Monsieur Poirot. I'm more than a historian. My family descends from the Order of the Serpent. I was raised on stories of the Cipher Stone, told it was our duty to protect it. When Lord Ravenwood invited me, I thought he'd found it. I wanted to ensure it stayed safe." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Safe, you say? Or in your possession? Did you attack Madame Dupont to silence her?" Carter shook his head vehemently. "No, I swear. I didn't touch her. But I've been watching everyone, trying to spot the real threat. There's a traitor here, someone after the stone for their own gain." "A traitor?" Poirot murmured. "Your journals show me again." Carter hesitated, then handed it over. Poirot flipped through pages of ciphers, sketches, and notes, finding a coded letter tucked between the pages. It was partially deciphered, revealing a phrase. "The heart lies in the ballroom's shadow." Poirot's pulse quickened. The ballroom another. Piece of the puzzle. "This letter," Poirot said, holding it up. "Where did you find it?" Carter swallowed. "In Lord Ravenwood's study, hidden in a book. I was researching, not stealing." Poirot pocketed the letter, his mind racing. "You have been helpful, monsieur, but I advise you cease your solitary searches. The hunter is close, and you are not above suspicion." Leaving Carter, Poirot sought out Captain Hastings, who was in the drawing room, chatting with Beatrice. "Mon ami," Poirot said, "we have a new lead the ballroom. The coded letter points there. We must investigate, but with care." Hastings grinned. "Right, Poirot. A ballroom sounds less grim than a secret chamber. What are we looking?" "F.O., huh?" Poirot's expression was grave. "The heart of the Cipher Stone, perhaps, but we must move quickly." With Beatrice and Hastings, Poirot entered the ballroom, a grand space with polished floors and towering windows. Chandeliers hung like frozen stars, their crystals catching the midday light. The coded letter's phrase, "The heart lies in the ballroom's shadow," echoed in Poirot's mind. He paced the room, his torch sweeping the walls, searching. For the serpentine symbol. Beatrice pointed to a mural depicting a rose garden, its center adorned with a faint serpentine carving. "There, Monsieur Poirot? Could that be it?" Poirot examined the mural, his fingers probing its edges. A soft click revealed a hidden panel, its surface etched with the symbol. Inside was a small compartment, empty save for a single rose petal, its edges curling. Poirot's heart sank, another clue taken, perhaps by the hunter. Hastings frowned. "Empty? That's a bit of a letdown, Poirot." "Non, mon ami," Poirot said. "The petal is a sign. The hunter was here, but they left a trace. We are close." As they left the ballroom, Poirot noticed Clara Wren lingering in the hall, her eyes wide. "Monsieur Poirot, I saw Dr. Carter near the ballroom earlier. He looked furtive." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your observation is noted." Dinner that evening was a tense affair, the guests' suspicions boiling over. Thomas Reed demanded answers, while Halley and Voss exchanged barbed remarks. Madame Dupont's sketches grew more detailed, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a knowing glint. Mrs. Prescott's fan beat frantically, and Carter avoided Poirot's gaze, his journal clutched tightly. After the meal, Poirot gathered Beatrice and Hastings in his room, the coded letters spread before them. "The ballroom was a step," he said, "but the hunter moves faster. The letters cipher it points to a shadow, perhaps cast by the chandelier. We must return tomorrow, in moonlight. Beatrice nodded, her resolve firm. I'll go with you, Monsieur Poirot. I want to find Uncle Alastair. Hastings clapped his hands. Moonlight, eh? Sounds like a proper adventure. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An adventure, yes, but a dangerous one. The hunter knows our moves. Retiring to his room, Poirot locked the letter with his other clues, his thoughts racing. Carter's confession, the ballroom's empty panel, the rose petal the puzzle was tightening, but the traitor's identity eluded him. He sat by the window, the manor's silhouette stark against the starry sky. A faint noise outside, a twig snapping, made him pause, but the garden was empty. His heart raced, but he felt a quiet triumph. The hunter was close. Their mistakes. Mounting. Tomorrow, he would search the ballroom by moonlight, confront Carter's half-truths, and unmask the traitor. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells burning with the promise of truth. Chapter 10. The Ballroom Revelation. The moon hung low over Ravenwood Manor, its silver light filtering through the ballroom's towering windows, casting intricate shadows across the polished floor. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center. The coded letters phrase, "The heart lies in the ballroom's shadow," echoing in his mind. The empty panel behind the mural, the rose petal left behind, and Dr. Simon Carter's half-confessed ties to the Order of the Serpent had tightened the mystery's grip. The hunter, Poirot knew, was among the guests, their desperation evident in their swift thefts and deadly traps. Tonight, under moonlight, he aimed to uncover the next piece of the Cipher Stone's puzzle. With his little gray cells poised for revelation, the day had been tense, the guests' nerves frayed by the mounting enigmas. Breakfast had seen Thomas. Reed threatened to leave, only to stay when Poirot hinted at imminent breakthroughs. Madame Elise Dupont's sketches grew eerily precise, mirroring the medallion's rose and serpentine symbol. Victor Hall, chastened by his forgery's exposure, kept to himself, while Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan beat like a metronome. Julian Voss's absences grew bolder, his excuses thinner. Miss Clara Wren's quiet vigilance betrayed her unease, and Dr. Carter's nervous scribbling drew Poirot's scrutiny. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, ever resolute, had agreed to join Poirot and Captain Hastings for the midnight search, her determination to find her uncle unwavering. Now, in the ballroom, Poirot, Beatrice, and Hastings stood beneath the grand chandelier, its crystals glinting like stars. The mural with the serpentine symbol loomed on the wall, its rose garden scene bathed in moonlight. Poirot's torch swept the floor, following the chandelier's shadow, which stretched toward the mural like a dark finger. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Hastings, "the letter speaks of a shadow. Observe how the moonlight aligns with the mural. There is method here." Hastings squinted, his brow furrowed. "You think the shadow points to something? A hidden lock, maybe?" Beatrice stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. Uncle Alastair loved games like this, hiding clues in plain sight. Could the chandelier's shadow mark the spot? Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. "Precisement, mademoiselle. Let us test the theory." He paced the floor, noting how the shadow's edge grazed a parquet tile near the mural, its surface slightly raised. Kneeling, he pressed the tile, feeling a faint give. With a soft click, it shifted, revealing a small compartment beneath. Inside was a fragment of stone, its surface carved with the serpentine symbol and a faint, pulsing glow like the medallions. Poirot lifted it carefully, its weight surprising for its size. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "A piece of the cipher." "Stone, I am certain," Beatrice gasped, leaning closer. "Is that it? The stone Uncle Alastair sought?" Poirot shook his head. "A fragment, mademoiselle. The stone is incomplete, but this is a vital piece." Hastings grinned. "Jolly good." Poirot, we're getting somewhere. But why leave it here? Before Poirot could answer, a scuffle sounded near the ballroom's entrance. A figure lunged from the shadows. Thomas Reed, his face twisted with greed. "Hand it over, Poirot," he shouted, reaching for the fragment. Hastings tackled Reed, pinning him to the floor. "Steady on, old chap. What's this about?" Reed struggled, his voice hoarse. "That stone's worth a fortune. Ravenwood owes me, and I'm taking it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Reed, your impatience betrays you. Did you attack Madame Dupont? Loosen the chandeliers?" Reed's face reddened. "No, I just want what's mine. I saw you come in here and followed. Let me go." Poirot gestured to Hastings, who released Reed but kept a wary eye on him. "Monsieur, your greed is noted, but I doubt you are the hunter. Your actions are too clumsy. Return to your room and do not interfere again." Reed scrambled to his feet, muttering curses, and fled the ballroom. Beatrice clutched Poirot's arm, her voice trembling. "He's desperate, but was he the one watching us?" "None," Poirot said, pocketing the stone fragment. "The hunter is subtler, more cunning. But they were here, I am sure, watching from the shadows." As they left the ballroom, Poirot noticed a faint scuff mark near the door, as if someone had stood there observing. His mind raced, connecting Reed's outburst to the broader puzzle. The hunter had missed their chance to seize the fragment, but their presence was undeniable. Back in the drawing room, the other guests were gathered, their faces pale under the lamplight. Dr. Carter looked up from his journal, his eyes wide. "What was that commotion?" We heard shouting. Poirot's voice was calm but firm. "A misunderstanding, monsieur." Monsieur Reed grew overzealous. "But we have found a clue, a piece of the cipher stone. The truth draws near." Mrs. Prescott gasped, her fan stilling. "The stone? Here? Oh, this is too much." Julian Voss leaned forward, his smirk gone. "You're stirring things up, Poirot. Be careful you don't get burned." Poirot met his gaze, unflinching. I'm accustomed to heat, monsieur. The fire of truth burns only the guilty." Dinner that evening was a fraught affair. Reed's absence noted, but uncommented. Voss's eyes followed Poirot, while Carter's nervous scribbling intensified. Madame Dupont's sketches now included the ballroom's mural, a detail Poirot found telling. Clara Wren served silently, her gaze flickering to Beatrice, who sat with quiet determination. After the meal, Poirot conferred with Beatrice and Hastings in his room, the stone fragment locked in his valise. "The fragment is a key," he said, "but to what?" The ballroom's shadow revealed it, but the hunter was close. "We must return to the garden tomorrow, to the rose arbor, where the medallion's inscription points." Hastings nodded. "Right. Poirot. But Reed, what if he tries again?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "He is a distraction, mon ami, not the mastermind. The hunter is someone with patience, with cunning, perhaps Carter, perhaps Voss." Beatrice's voice was firm. "I'll help, Monsieur Poirot, for Uncle Alistair." Poirot patted her hand. "Your courage is admirable, mademoiselle. Tomorrow we search under daylight, where shadows cannot hide." Retiring to his room, Poirot examined the stone fragment under his lamp, its glow faint but steady. Its surface bore a partial cipher, incomplete but familiar, matching the grids. In Carter's journal and Dupont's notebook. He locked it away, his thoughts racing. The ballroom's revelation had shifted the game, exposing Reed's greed, but not the hunter's identity. Carter's deception, Voss's absences, Dupont's sketches, all were threads in the tapestry, but the pattern remained elusive. A soft creak outside his door made him pause. Peering through the keyhole, he saw nothing but darkness, yet the air felt charged, as if the hunter lingered just beyond sight. His heart raced, but he felt a quiet triumph. The stone fragment was a victory, a step closer to the cipher stone's heart. Tomorrow, he would search the garden, confront Carter and Voss, and unravel the rose's final secret. For now, he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells alight with the promise of justice. Chapter 11. The Traitor Unmasked. The morning sun pierced the mist enveloping Ravenwood Manor, casting a golden glow over the garden's rose arbor, but Hercule Poirot felt no warmth in its light. The stone fragment from the ballroom, glowing faintly with the serpentine symbol, had brought him closer to the cipher stone, yet the hunter's shadow loomed larger. Thomas Reed's greedy outburst had revealed his desperation, but Poirot suspected a subtler mind orchestrated the manners. Mysteries Madame Elise Dupont's attack, the chandelier traps, and Lord Alistair Ravenwood's disappearance. Dr. Simon, Carter's half-confessed ties to the Order of the Serpent, and Julian Voss's elusive absences were troubling. But another figure nagged at Poirot's instincts. Miss Clara Wren, the quiet librarian, whose knowledge of Ravenwood's secrets seemed too precise. His little gray cells thrummed. Ready to unmask the traitor. Breakfast was a taut affair, the dining room's grandeur dimmed by suspicion. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her resolve unwavering despite her pallor. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook filled with sketches of the serpentine symbol, sipped tea with a guarded gaze. Victor Hall, still reeling from his forgery's exposure, avoided eye contact. Thomas Red, chastened by his ballroom outburst, muttered apologies. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan beat frantically, her pearls clicking. Julian Voss watched the room with a predator's calm, while Dr. Simon Carter's nervous scribbling betrayed his unease. Clara Wren served coffee, her movements precise, but her eyes avoiding Poirot's. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice cutting through the silence. Bon natin, mes amis. We are close to the heart of our mystery, non? A stone fragment, a rose, a ballroom shadow all point to the cipher stone. But the hunter among us grows careless. Who hides the truth? Mrs. Prescott gasped, her fan stilling. Monsieur Poirot, you keep suggesting one of us is a villain. It's too dreadful to contemplate. Poirot's mustache twitched. Dreadful, but true. Mademoiselle Wren, you have been most helpful with Lord Ravenwood's journals. Yet I wonder, do you know more than you share? Clara's hands faltered, a coffee pot trembling. I've told you everything, Monsieur Poirot. I only catalogued his papers. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. Precisement, mademoiselle. Your knowledge is intimate, yet you are silent when secrets surface. Come, walk with me. Leaving the others, Poirot led Clara to the library, where sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the shelves. He closed the door, his tone firm but gentle. Mademoiselle, you know this manor's secrets, its journals, its chambers, its ciphers. Yet you hesitate. Why? Clara's eyes darted to the floor. I'm loyal to Lord Ravenwood. He trusted me, but I've been approached, Monsieur Poirot. Someone offered me money to share his papers. Poirot's pulse quickened. Someone? Who? Clara swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. A letter unsigned slipped under my door a week ago. It promised a fortune for information on the cipher stone. I refused, but I've been watched ever since. Poirot leaned closer. This letter, do you have it? Clara nodded, retrieving a folded paper from her apron. It was written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. Name your price for the stone's secrets. Deliver to the village inn by midnight, or consequences follow. The serpentine symbol adorned the bottom, inked in crimson. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, pocketing the letter. You did well to keep this, mademoiselle. But why not tell me sooner? I was afraid, Clara admitted. Lord Ravenwood warned me about the guardian a traitor in the order. I thought it might be one of the guests. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Clara's confession cast her in a new light, but her hesitation suggested she still withheld something. Merci, mademoiselle. Stay close to the others. The hunter is near. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot found Captain Hastings and Beatrice waiting. Mon ami, he said to Hastings, Mademoiselle Wren has revealed a letter demanding secrets. We must search Lord Ravenwood's study again. The safe behind the portrait may hold the final cipher. Hastings grinned. Right. Poirot, a safe sounds promising. Let's crack it open. Beatrice clutched his arm. I'll help, Monsieur Poirot. For Uncle Alastair. The trio entered the study, its air heavy with the scent of old books and wax. The portrait of the Ravenwood ancestor, with its serpent ring, loomed over the fireplace. Poirot swung it open, revealing the safe's combination lock. He studied it, recalling the poem's lines. At midnight's toll, the heart unfolds. Numbers, perhaps, he murmured, trying combinations based on the manor's clock's 12 for midnight, 4 for the poem's lines. After several attempts, a click sounded, and the safe opened. Inside was a single document Lord Ravenwood's. Will, naming Beatrice as his sole heir, but with a condition. The cipherstone's secret must be solved by the worthy, lest the guardian claim it. Beatrice gasped. Me? But I don't understand ciphers. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Your uncle believed in you, mademoiselle. The will is a clue, but also a motive. Someone seeks to prevent you from claiming your inheritance. Hastings frowned. A motive for murder, you mean? This is getting grim, Poirot. Oui, mon ami, Poirot said. The hunter knows the will's terms. We must act swiftly. As they left the study, Poirot noticed a faint scuff mark near the door, similar to those in the ballroom and chamber. The hunter had been here, perhaps watching as they opened the safe. He resolved to set a trap, using the will as bait. In the drawing room, he gathered the guests, his voice commanding attention. Mies Amos, he announced, holding up the will. Lord Ravenwood's testament names Mademoiselle Beatrice as his heir, but only if she solves the cipherstone's secret. This is why our hunter acts to stop her. Tonight, I shall guard the will in my room. Let us see who takes the bait. The guests murmured, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion. Dr. Carter's pen stilled, Voss's smirk faded, and Madame Dupont's eyes narrowed. Clara Wren looked pale, while Hawley and Reed exchanged wary glances. Mrs. Prescott's fan beat frantically, her voice shrill. A trap? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, this is too dangerous. Poirot smiled faintly. Danger is the path to truth, madame. That night, Poirot sat in his darkened room, the will placed prominently on his desk, his valise locked with the medallion, key, and other clues. He kept his door ajar, a candle burning low, and waited. Hours passed, the manor silent save for the creak of old wood. Then a shadow moved in the hall, tall, cloaked. Pausing at his door, Poirot held his breath, his hand on a heavy candlestick. The figure hesitated, then slipped away, their footsteps fading. He sprang to the window, catching a glimpse of a silhouette crossing the garden toward the rose arbor. The hunter had resisted the bait, but revealed their presence. His heart raced, but he felt a quiet triumph. The will had flushed the hunter out, their silhouette a clue to their identity. Tomorrow he would search the garden again, confront Clara's half-truths, impress Carter and Voss harder. The traitor was close, their mistakes mounting. Retiring to his bed, Poirot locked the will with his clues, the manor silhouette, stark against the moonlit sky. The puzzle was nearly complete, the cipherstone's heart within reach. He blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells burning with the promise of unmasking the traitor. Chapter 12. The Will's Warning. The pale light of dawn crept over Ravenwood Manor, illuminating the frost-kissed garden, but Hercule Poirot's mind was far from serene. A shadow that had lingered at his door last night, fleeing toward. The rose arbor confirmed the hunter's boldness. Lord Alistair Ravenwood's will, naming Lady Beatrice as heir contingent on solving the Cipher Stone's secret, had stirred the trader's desperation. The stone fragment, the silver medallion, the brass key, and the cryptic notes locked in Poirot's valise were threads weaving toward the truth. But the guardian a traitor within the Order of the Serpent remained elusive. Dr. Simon Carter's confessions, Julian Voss's absences, and Miss Clara Wren's hesitant revelations all pointed to a web of deceit, and Poirot's little gray cells were primed to unravel it. Breakfast was a fraught affair, the dining room's opulence dimmed by the guests' strained faces. Beatrice sat beside Poirot, clutching a handkerchief, her resolve tempered by fear. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook now a mirror of the Manor's symbols, sipped tea with a guarded gaze. Victor Hall, subdued since his forgery's exposure, avoided eye contact. Thomas Reed, chastened by his ballroom outburst, muttered about debts. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan fluttered like a trapped moth, her pearls clicking nervously. Julian Voss watched the room with a predator's calm, while Clara Wren served coffee, her movements stiff. Dr. Simon Carter's journal lay closed, his nervous energy palpable. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice slicing through the tension. "Bon matin, Miss Amos. The truth draws near, non? Lord Ravenwood's will names Mademoiselle Beatrice's heir, but only if she unlocks the Cipher Stone's secret. Last night, someone sought to steal it from my room. The hunter grows reckless." "Mrs." Prescott gasped, her fan stilling. "A thief? In your room? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, this is unbearable." Poirot's mustache twitched. Unbearable, perhaps, but revealing. The will warns of a guardian a traitor who seeks the stone's power. "Who among you fears Beatrice's success?" The guests shifted, uneasily, their eyes darting. Carter's face flushed, Voss's smirk faded, and Clara's coffee pot trembled. Beatrice leaned forward, her voice steady despite her pallor. "Monsieur Poirot, what does the will mean by the worthy? I'm no cipher expert." Poirot patted her hand. "Your uncle believed in your heart, mademoiselle, not your skill with codes. The stone's secret is near, and we shall find it together." After breakfast, Poirot conferred with Captain Hastings in the drawing-room, the will spread before them. "Mon ami," he said, "the shadow last night fled to the rose arbor. The will's warning points there, but we must set a trap. The hunter expects us to act. Let us give them a performance." Hastings grinned. "A trap, eh? Like old times, Poirot. What's the plan?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "We announce a search of the garden at noon, but we go earlier, at dawn tomorrow. Tonight, we guard the medallion, making it known it is the key. The hunter will strike, and we shall be ready." Beatrice, joining them, nodded. "I'll help, Monsieur Poirot. I want Uncle Alistair found." Poirot turned to her. "Mademoiselle, your courage is vital, but stay close, danger is near." The day passed in a haze of suspicion. Poirot observed the guests, noting their interactions. Voss slipped away again, claiming a village errand, but Poirot sent Graves to verify his story. Carter's scribbling resumed, his journal now guarded like a treasure. Madame Dupont's sketches grew more intricate, including the ballrooms, mural and the stone fragment cipher. Halley and Reed bickered over trivialities, while Mrs. Prescott gossiped with Clara, who deflected questions with practiced ease. At luncheon, Poirot made his move, addressing the group with calculated drama. "Miss Amos, the medallion we found is the key to the Cipher Stone. Today at noon, we search the rose arbor where the will's secret lies. Join us if you dare." The announcement sparked murmurs, but Poirot watched the reactions. Carter's pen stilled, Voss's eyes narrowed, and Clara's face paled. The trap was set, but the real search would come at dawn, catching the hunter off guard. After luncheon, Poirot visited Madame Dupont's room, seeking insight into her sketches. She welcomed him, her notebook open. "Madame," he said, "your drawings are precise. The medallion, the mural, the cipher. What do you know of the stone?" Dupont's eyes were sharp. "I'm an artist, Monsieur Poirot, but also a student of history." Lord Ravenwood shared his obsession with the Order of the Serpent. "My sketches are observations, nothing more." Poirot pointed to a sketch of the rose arbor. "This you drew it before we found the medallion." "How?" She hesitated, then sighed. "I saw Lord Ravenwood there, weeks ago, digging at night. I thought it was eccentric. Now I wonder." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "Merci, madame. Your eyes see much." As evening fell, Poirot prepared for the trap. He placed the medallion in a locked box on his desk, announcing its presence to the guests at dinner. "The medallion is secure," he said, "but I shall guard it tonight. Let us see who dares to challenge Poirot." The guests exchanged wary glances, the air thick with tension. Voss's absence was noted, his return delayed by business. Carter avoided Poirot's gaze, while Clara's hands trembled as she cleared plates. Beatrice whispered, "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot." Dinner ended, and Poirot retired to his room, the medallion box a decoy, the real medallion hidden in his valise. He sat in darkness, a candlestick at hand, his senses alert. Hours ticked by, the manor silent save for the wind's moan. Then a soft creak sounded a floorboard in the hall. Poirot sprang to the door, peering through the keyhole. A cloaked figure hovered, their hand testing the knob. The lock held, and the figure retreated, their silhouette tall and lean, vanishing down the corridor. Poirot followed silently, his torch dimmed, tracking the figure to the garden's edge. They paused at the rose arbor, then slipped into the shadows as a cloud obscured the moon. His heart pounded, but Poirot held back, noting the figure's gait familiar, yet indistinct. The trap had worked, flushing the hunter out, but their identity remained just out of reach. Returning to his room, he checked the medallion box untouched, as expected. The hunter had been cautious, but their move revealed their intent at dawn. Poirot, Beatrice, and Hastings searched the rose arbor, the manor still asleep. The stone bench's serpentine symbol gleamed in the early light, and Poirot knelt, probing the ground beneath. His fingers found a loose stone, lifting it to reveal a small cavity. Inside was a folded paper, marked with the serpentine symbol, and a cipher grid, partially solved. "The heart's final key lies in the cellar." Beatrice gasped. "The cellar? Uncle Alistair never went there." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "He did, mademoiselle, in secret. The will warned of the guardian, and the cellar may hold the final truth." Hastings clapped his hands. "A cellar? Ah, sounds like a proper hideout for a treasure." Poirot pocketed the cipher, his mind racing. The cellar a new lead, but the hunter's silhouette lingered, a clue to their identity. He resolved to confront the guests, focusing on Carter, Voss, and Clara, whose actions betrayed hidden motives. Back in the drawing room, the guests gathered, their faces pale. Poirot held up the cipher. "Mies Amos, the rose arbor has spoken. The cipher stone's heart lies in the cellar, but the guardian watches. Who among you will confess?" The room erupted in murmurs, but no one spoke. Voss's eyes met Poirot's, cold and defiant, while Carter's pen trembled. Clara looked away, her face ashen. The trap had tightened, the hunter cornered, but not yet caught. Retiring to his room, Poirot locked the cipher with his clues. The manor's silhouette stark against the morning sky. The cellar beckoned, the guardian's identity near. Tomorrow he would descend, confront the traitor, and rescue Ravenwood. For now he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells alight with the thrill of the hunt. Chapter 13. The Guardian's Gambit. The morning mist clung to Ravenwood Manor's stone walls, veiling the garden's rose arbor in a ghostly shroud, but Hercule Poirot's mind was razor-sharp, the ciphered paper from the arbor pointing to the cellar as the heart's final key had brought him tantalizingly close to the cipher stone and Lord Alistair Ravenwood's fate. The shadow at his door, fleeing to the garden, and the mounting clues medallion, stone fragment, brass key, and cryptic notes confirmed the hunter's desperation. Dr. Simon Carter's ancestral ties to the Order of the Serpent, Julian Voss's elusive absences, and Miss Clara Wren's hesitant confessions all pointed to a traitor among them, the guardian warned of in Ravenwood's will. Poirot's little gray cells thrummed with purpose, ready to spring the trap that would unmask the culprit. Breakfast was a tense tableau, the dining room's grandeur dimmed by the guests' strained silence. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood sat beside Poirot, her eyes resolute despite the shadows beneath them. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook now a mirror of the manor's ciphers, sipped tea with a wary gaze. Victor Howell, subdued since his forgery's exposure, toyed with his monocle. Thomas Reed, chastened by his greed-fueled outburst, muttered about leaving. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan beat like a frantic heartbeat, her pearls glinting nervously. Julian Voss watched with a predator's calm, while Clara Wren served coffee, her movements stiff. Dr. Simon Carter's journal lay closed, his fingers twitching with unease. Poirot spread his napkin, his voice cutting through the heavy air. Bon matin, Mies Amos. The cipher stone's heart lies in the cellar, as a new clue reveals. But the guardian, the traitor among us, grows bold. Last night they stood at my door, seeking the medallion. Who will confess before the truth unmasks them? Mrs. Prescott gasped, her fan stilling. At your door? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, this is too frightful. Poirot's mustache twitched. Frightful, oui, but illuminating. The guardian fears our progress. Monsieur Carter, your ties to the Order of the Serpent, do they compel you to act? Carter's face flushed, his spectacles slipping. I've told you, Monsieur Poirot, I'm a protector, not a villain. My family swore to guard the stone, not steal it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you are always near when secrets surface. And you, Monsieur Voss, your absences, they grow suspicious. Where were you last night? Voss's smirk faded, his voice cold. In my room, Poirot. I don't skulk in shadows like some. Beatrice leaned forward, her voice sharp. Someone does. I saw a figure in the garden last night, near the rose arbor, after dinner. The room stilled, all eyes darting. Clara's coffee pot clinked against a cup, her face paling. Poirot noted her reaction, his suspicions deepening. Merci, mademoiselle, he said. We shall investigate the cellar today, but first I must speak with Monsieur Carter alone. In the library, Poirot faced Carter, the morning light casting stark patterns through the stained glass windows. Monsieur, he said, his tone firm, your journal, your presence in the chamber, your knowledge of the stone, it is too much. Coincidence. Tell me the truth, or I shall assume you are the guardian. Carter's shoulders slumped, his voice breaking. I've hidden nothing more, Monsieur Poirot. But I lied about one thing. I drugged Madame Dupont. Not to harm her, but to scare her off. She was too close to the stone, sketching its symbols. I thought she'd sell its secrets. Poirot's pulse quickened. And Lord Ravenwood? Did you orchestrate his disappearance? Carter shook his head vehemently. No, I staged the study. To look like a vanishing locked door, toppled statuette, to make everyone think he was gone, to protect the stone. But he's alive, I swear, hidden in the cellar, where the Order's final secret lies. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The cellar, oui. You will show me, monsieur, now? Carter hesitated, then nodded. It's dangerous. The Order built traps to guard the stone. Poirot summoned Hastings and Beatrice, briefing them quickly. Mon ami, mademoiselle, we descend to the cellar. Monsieur Carter claims Lord Ravenwood is there, alive. But we must be cautious the Guardian's gambit is at play. Hastings clapped his hands. A rescue mission, huh? Lead on, Poirot. Beatrice's face lit with hope. Uncle Alistair? Oh, please let it be true. With Carter leading, the group descended a narrow staircase behind the kitchen, its stone steps slick with damp. Poirot's torch illuminated cobwebbed walls, the air thick with mildew. At the bottom was a heavy door, its surface etched with the serpentine symbol. Carter produced a key similar to Poirot's brass one from his pocket, unlocking the door. With a groan, inside was a cavernous cellar, its walls lined with ancient crates and barrels. A stone table stood at the center, marked with a cipher grid and the serpentine symbol. But Poirot's attention was drawn to a corner where a faint moan sounded. There, bound and gagged, was Lord Alistair Ravenwood, his face gaunt but alive. Cried out, rushing to him, "Uncle Alistair!" She untied his bonds, tears streaming as he coughed weakly. Poirot knelt beside him, checking his pulse. "Monsieur, you are safe now. Who did this?" Ravenwood's voice was hoarse. "Carter. He tricked me. Said it was for my safety, to protect the stone. But he wanted it for himself." Carter backed away, his face ashen. "No, I was protecting it. The Order's oath." Poirot's voice was steel. "Your oath was a lie, monsieur. You drugged." Madame Dupont staged Lord Ravenwood's disappearance and loosened chandeliers to scare us off. "You are the Guardian, but not to protect, to possess." Carter lunged for the door, but Hastings tackled him, pinning him to the ground. "Not so fast, old boy." Poirot retrieved a final ciphered message from the table, its grid partially solved. The stone's heart is whole in the worthy's hands. He pocketed it, his mind racing. Carter's confession explained much, but loose threads remained Voss's absences, Clara's hesitance, Dupont's sketches dot as they escorted Ravenwood and Carter upstairs. The guests gathered in the drawing-room, their faces a mix of shock and relief. Mrs. Prescott's fan fell silent. Hale's monocle dropped, and Voss's smirk vanished. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Is it over, Monsieur Poirot?" "Not yet, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "The stone remains hidden, and Carter's actions suggest others may know more." Ravenwood, supported by Beatrice, spoke weakly. "The stone, it's not what you think. It's a map, not a treasure, to a fund for good works. The Order guarded it, but greed corrupted some." Poirot nodded, his thoughts aligning. The cellar had yielded Ravenwood, but the stone's final piece was near. He locked Carter in a guest room, under Graves' watch, and addressed the group. "Mies Amos, the Guardian is caught, but the stone's heart awaits. Tomorrow we complete the puzzle." Retiring to his room, Poirot added the ciphered message to his valise, the Manor's silhouette stark against the twilight. Carter's gambit had failed, but the stone's secret beckoned. Tomorrow he would confront Voss and Clara, search for the final piece, and ensure Ravenwood's safety. For now he blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells alight with the thrill of victory. Chapter 14. The Cipher's Resolution. The dawnlight filtered through Ravenwood Manor's tall windows, casting a serene glow over the grand hall, but Hercule Poirot felt the weight of the final act pressing upon him. The rescue of Lord Alistair Ravenwood from the cellar, Dr. Simon Carter's unmasking as the treacherous Guardian, and the ciphered message pointing to the stone's heart had brought the mystery of the cipher stone to its climax. Yet, loose threads remained Julian Voss's elusive absences, Miss Clara Wren's guarded knowledge, and Madame Elise Dupont's prescient sketches suggested others might still harbor secrets. The stone fragment, silver medallion, brass key, and cryptic notes locked in Poirot's valise were pieces of a puzzle nearly complete, and his little gray cells burned with the resolve to see it through. The guests gathered in the drawing-room, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. Lord Ravenwood, weak but resolute, sat beside Lady Beatrice, his hand clasping hers. Madame Elise Dupont, her notebook closed, watched with sharp eyes. Victor Hall, his swagger diminished, adjusted his monocle nervously. Thomas Reed, subdued, after his greedy outburst, sat apart. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's fan lay still, her pearls glinting softly. Julian Voss leaned against a wall, his hawk-like gaze unwavering, while Clara Wren stood by the door, her expression unreadable. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood at Poirot's side, ready for the denouement. Poirot stepped forward, his small frame commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice steady, "we have reached the heart of our mystery. Lord Ravenwood lives, thanks to our efforts, and Dr. Carter, the guardian, has confessed his crimes drugging Madame Dupont, staging his lordship's disappearance, and setting traps to thwart us. But the cipher stone remains, its secret hidden. In this manner, today we resolve it." Mrs. Prescott's voice trembled. "Resolve it? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, surely it's over now?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Not quite, madame. The stone is a map, as Lord Ravenwood revealed a map to a fund for good works, guarded by the Order of the Serpent. But the final piece lies with us, and I suspect not all truths have been told." He turned to Ravenwood, his eyes gentle but probing. "Monsieur, you spoke of a fund. Where is the stone's heart, and who else sought it?" Ravenwood's voice was hoarse but clear. "The stone is no jewel, but a set of engraved tablets hidden in the manor's foundations. The cellar holds the final tablet, locked in a vault. The medallion and stone fragment are keys, but the ciphered message holds the code. I hid to protect it, but Carter betrayed me, believing he could claim the fund for himself." Beatrice gasped. "Uncle, why didn't you tell me?" Ravenwood squeezed her hand. "I wanted to shield you, child. The Order's oath demanded secrecy, but greed corrupted it. Carter wasn't alone, someone else pulled strings." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Precisement, monsieur. And I believe I know who." He produced the ciphered message from the rose arbor, its grid partially solved. "This points to the cellar's vault. Let us go, with all present, to end this." The group descended to the cellar, Ravenwood leaning on Beatrice and Hastings. The stone table from the previous night stood in the dim light, its cipher grid glowing faintly under Poirot's torch. A vault door, etched with the serpentine symbol, was set into the wall, its lock complex but familiar. Poirot placed the stone fragment and medallion into slots beside the lock, their glow intensifying. "The cipher," Poirot said, studying the message. "The grid translates to a sequence worthy in numbers, based on the poem." He calculated swiftly, inputting the combination: 12151820 The vault clicked open, revealing a stone tablet, its surface carved with a map and inscriptions detailing a fund for humanitarian aid, hidden in a Swiss vault. Ravenwood sighed, his relief palpable. "That's it, the cipher stone's heart. It's safe now." Before anyone could react, Julian Voss lunged forward, snatching the tablet. "Not yet, old man?" he hissed, bolting for the stairs. Hastings tackled him, the tablet clattering to the floor. Voss struggled, but Poirot's voice cut through. "Enough, Monsieur Voss. Your absences, your threats, you are Carter's accomplice, oui? You sought the stone's wealth for yourself. Boss's eyes flashed, but he sagged under Hastings. Grip. Carter promised me a share. He said the Order's fund was ours for the taking. Clara Wren stepped forward, her voice trembling. I knew, Monsieur Poirot. Voss threatened me, made me pass him notes from the journals. I'm sorry. Poirot's gaze softened. Your fear is forgiven, mademoiselle, but your silence aided him. Madame Dupont, your sketches, did you suspect Voss? Dupont nodded. I saw him in the garden, sketching the arbor. I thought he was an artist, like me, but his interest was too keen. Poirot turned to the group, his voice commanding. The stone is secure, the guardian and his accomplice unmasked. Monsieur Halley, your forgery was greed. Monsieur Reed, your impatience was folly. But the true danger was Carter and Voss, corrupted by the promise of wealth. Ravenwood rose, his voice firm. The fund will be protected, as the Order intended. Beatrice, you are the worthy one. You'll oversee it. Beatrice's eyes welled with tears. I'll do it, uncle, for you. Poirot addressed the guests. Mies Amos, the mystery is solved. Carter and Voss will face justice. The rest of you return to your lives, but remember the cost of greed. As Graves escorted Carter and Voss to await the authorities, the guests dispersed, their relief tempered by shame. Poirot, Beatrice, and Hastings remained in the drawing-room, where Ravenwood raised a glass of claret. To Monsieur Poirot, he said, whose little gray cells saved us all. Poirot bowed, his mustache curling with a modest smile. To justice, monsieur, and to the worthy heart of Mademoiselle Beatrice. The manor's silhouette stood stark against the evening sky, its secrets laid bare. Poirot retired to his room, the valise's contents no longer needed. The cipher stone was a map to good, not gold, and its guardians had fallen. He blew out his candle, the darkness enveloping him, his little gray cells glowing with the satisfaction of a puzzle resolved.